Are severely fastened. Thank you. The regular meeting of the Cambria Community Services District. The regular April 18th meeting of the Cambria Community Services District Board of Directors is hereby called to order. Would you please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? All of our directors are present. So we have a quorum. And I don't have a president's report, so I'm going to go right to the agenda review. I do have something for agenda review, but first of all, I want to ask any of the directors if they want to have anything on the agenda removed or moved to give it a different position. Any directors want any changes to the agenda? Okay. I have one that I want to make because Mr. Hom, Alex Hom, is here online to answer questions about the audit. I propose that we take regular business item 7C and take it up right after public comment and before the manager's report, since he's here online available to us. If there's no objection from the board, that change is duly made. Okay, great. Oh, and Mr. Thomas, Director Thomas has a proposal.
Yeah, thank you, President Gray. And I just wanted to ask, bring up the topic 7B, the revenue enhancement report, the fact that the ad hoc committee report wasn't included in the packet or made available to the public prior to yesterday afternoon. Should we defer that? I just bring that as a question.
Well, my judgment was that it was aired sufficiently during the multiple meetings of the Finance Committee, first of all. And we do this sometimes to add, to stuff that's left out or added late. It is legitimate. And if Mr. Carmel might want to weigh in on this, but I think we can do this legitimately as a late addition.
Was it posted on the website?
I believe it was posted on the website, yes.
Yeah, yesterday afternoon.
Yesterday.
Yeah.
And when was it made available to the public?
At the time, it was posted on the website.
And that was how long ago?
4 p.m.
Well, it was less than 24 hours. Now, we have people here who are going to do a presentation, but.
And the board had copies of that before that time?
We did not. I guess there was a mix. The mix-up was that the item was put on the agenda, and the recommendations were summarized in the staff report, but some of the attachments were also included. However, the report itself that was actually sent out from the Finance Committee was for some reason left off. So they didn't have the total package on the agenda until something like yesterday afternoon, 4 o'clock or so.
So long as it was available to the board and the public at the same time, then it's fine.
Yes, it was.
Then it's fine to go forward.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yes, it was available. It was put on the website, and notice went out to the board members that this was being done at the same time. Okay, so I think we should continue it, and just since all the people were here and the background documents are there too. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to be sure we were copacetic.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Any other agenda reviews and adjustments? Seeing none, I think I'll move on to board member communications. Any individual directors have some brief comment or report on their activities or a question? Please, I'd like to hear from you. Director Farmer.
Yes, thank you, President Gray. So I had the flyer available with regard to the event Earth Day this coming Sunday at the Creekside Reserve by Green Space, and I left it at home. And it's really colorful. It has all the events that are taking place, all the booths that are going to be there. I was going to read off of it, and you'd all get excited. Well, it's sitting on the couch. So I just want you to know that it's going to be a great opportunity, as usual, every year to celebrate Earth Day, which we should do every day, but especially this coming Sunday. So if you can make it from 11 to 3 over at the Creekside Reserve on Center Street to help celebrate Earth Day, right here in our lovely community. That would be really cool. You'll probably meet people that you know, maybe make new friends too. It's always a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Farmer. Any other comments or brief comments from the board members? I see none. Let's move on to the, actually, what I was doing was, on the agenda adjustment, I was doing this before, I'm going to have it before public comment. So since the, I know Mr. Commander McDonald is here, we'll have the public safety reports first, then we'll have the item 7C, and then we'll go to public safety, public comment, and then item 7C. Thank you. Commander McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board, staff, public. For the month of March 2024, we had 5 arrests in Cambria. One was for domestic violence, one was for elder abuse, one was for criminal threats, and 2 individuals were arrested on warrants for their arrest. We had 4 assault and battery calls. 2 of those were simple batteries. 2 of those were domestic violence related. We had 5 disturbance calls, which included 4 general disturbances and 1 family dispute. We had 1 burglary reported. That was a residential burglary. There were no thefts reported in March. We had 2 vandalisms reported. 1 was damage to a vehicle. The other was graffiti. On that graffiti incident, fortunately, the subjects that were responsible, the suspects as we call them, were located and they were released on citation, which means they got a ticket for that graffiti that they created. There were no mail thefts or phone scams reported to us in March. We had 7 suspicious circumstance calls, which included 3 suspicious circumstances, 3 suspicious vehicles, and 1 suspicious person called into us. The deputies that work up here did 15 vehicle stops in Cambria during the month of March, so 15 enforcement stops, and they were all vehicle stops. There was also 13 preventative patrol activities, including 9 on-site activities, 2 patrol checks, 1 extra patrol, and 1 foot patrol. And with that, that's the end of my report, and I'm available for questions or concerns.
Thank you. Any questions from the directors? Dr. Farmer.
Yes, thank you, President Gray. Last night at the NCAC meeting, and Sergeant Slaughter did a really fine job sitting in for you. I just want to let you know that. But what was brought up was someone requested that perhaps up here with regard to calls for service, and obviously only Cambria is filled in because that's who we are, and someone asked if all the other areas could be filled in as well, if that wouldn't be an inconvenience, just so we could see, compare what's going on in other communities versus ours.
Yeah, Sergeant Slaughter reached out to me immediately with that, and so I concur that's not a bad idea, and it's something that's simple for us to include in that, so that the banner would then compare community to community. I mean, certainly it's all public information, and we're happy to share it.
All right, thank you, Commander.
Any other questions? Any public comment on this report? Well, hearing none.
Yes, Tina Dickinson.
Oh, Tina
on
Dixon.
Zoom.
Yeah, Ms. Dixon online, I think, right?
Yes, thank
Zoom.
you. I'm just wondering if any of the, in the sheriff deputy's report, we had an incident right next door to our home of an intruder making his way into the home. Apparently it was an unenforced entry, and there was footage of about 27 seconds that our neighbor shared with us from her indoor cameras. Unfortunately, she doesn't have outdoor cameras. She was not home at the time. this would an elderly person. And I've noticed that the sheriff's deputy referred to a burglary. I don't know that it was ever actually defined as a burglary, but it certainly was an intrusion into a private property, a home on Park Hill, and of some concern. And then a deputy did come and speak to my husband and myself the following day. And then there was a presence of a deputy sort of patrolling the area the following day. But I just wanted to know if that was included in the report that he just gave.
So the residential burglary that I reported occurred in March. I believe the incident that you're referring to happened in April, in this month. So that one will get reported next month. But yes, that did have some video evidence, and we are continuing to try and develop any leads to hold a suspect accountable in that particular crime.
I think it might, as a question following up on that, just to maybe it's helpful to define burglary, what the crime of burglary is, because it's not just getting into a house. It has to be an intent to.
That's true. So
certain
a burglary is entering into any kind of a structure. It can be a house or a business or a car with the intent to commit any felony or any theft. So that could be a felony theft or a misdemeanor theft or any other felony crime. But it's the act of entering into the building or locked space that defines what a burglary is. From time to time, we'll have someone that may break into a building to sleep. That wouldn't necessarily rise to the level of a burglary because they're not intending to steal and they're not intending to commit a felony. That would be classified as an unlawful entry, and that would be a misdemeanor crime.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Any other question, any other on comment, either in the hall or by Zoom?
Tina Dickinson has her hand raised again.
Okay, Ms. Dixon, yeah, if it's a short question.
Thanks, President Gray.
Yeah.
So to follow up on that, the video clearly shows that the individual was opening drawers and that at some point put something in his right pocket of the garment, the pants he was wearing. So I would just say that, when you ask that question, burglary or with intent, that it was quite clear that he was going through drawers, and that is shown on the video. So just to clear that up.
Thank you.
And that crime has been classified as a burglary, and that's as we're investigating.
Yeah, and that will be on next month's report, or the report that's submitted next month, the report for April. Yeah.
Correct.
No further comment or questions? Thank you, Senator McDonald, and
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you next month. Chief Berkey, fire report.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the board, members of the staff, members of the community. This is the report for March of 2024. So we had a total incidence of 64, which was down quite a bit from 79 the year before. So that's good news. We had 0 fires in the month of March, which was awesome and normal. And then we had 42 rescue and EMS calls, 3 hazardous conditions, 5 service calls, 10 good intent calls, 3 false alarms, and 1 severe weather call. That concludes that portion of the report. Yeah, nice and brief.
Thank you.
I did want to mention really quick, as you all know, we sent out the notice to destroy weeds last week. I believe it was last week. And so we've been getting quite a few calls about that. So I just want to remind the public that that is not a bill. That's just a reminder moving forward that we are going to be evaluating that in July. So, and it doesn't mean you're out of compliance. It's just like another reminder, just as this is.
Yeah.
So that concludes the report. Open for any questions.
Any questions from the directors? Any comment, any public comment from either the people in the hall here or people online?
No,
No. Any written comment? No.
no.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Have a great day.
We'll move on now to general public comment, which is comment on items that are not on the agenda but are under the purview of the CCSD. And I'll remind people that that includes, if the items that are going to be taken up in the closed session, we'll have public comment on those right before we go into closed session. So if you have something to say about one of those three topics under section 9, we'll take it up at that time. Otherwise, anything that's not on the agenda, if you are welcome to comment. I have a card from Christine Heinrichs. Please step forward.
Thank you. Good afternoon. From the April 11th meeting, item 6B, the San Simeon Water and Wastewater Alignment, I raise a question as to the board's action to transfer its decision-making authority on the alignment to General Manager McElhaney and Utilities Manager Jim Green. This decision was not among the possibilities mentioned in the agenda item. Mr. McElhaney presented it as the result of a meeting with State Parks Representatives Dan Fallett, Doug Barker, and Katie Drexig the previous day. The agenda item presented a discussion of the 4 alternatives and the staff's recommendation that the board approve alternative 3. Instead, the public got no discussion of the alternatives, but a 10-minute shuffle of responsibility for the selection to General Manager McElhaney and Utilities Manager Green. The board acknowledged that State Parks will influence the selection and relinquished its authority to these 2 staff members. Mr. Green presented the decision-making as time-limited and urgent, that bringing it to the board is impractical. I agree that this project is urgent, but this is a significant decision and the board should retain its authority to review it in public. This is an opportunity for the board to develop its relationship with State Parks, an important state agency. State Parks has many resources to bring to the selection of the pipeline alignment. It is a valuable partner. Removing oversight in the cause of expediency is unjustified and risky. The pipe burst in 2021. Staff has had 2.5 years to reach out to State Parks and resolve the access issue. Suspending oversight procedures risks serious infrastructure and environmental miscues in a project that will serve Cambria for many years to come. It's important to get it right. I encourage the board to revisit this decision and include board members in the decision-making process and review and approve the final choice. On another issue, I remind Mr. McElhaney that he assured the public at last night's NCAC meeting that he will itemize the legal expenses for the CUSD well negotiations, mediation, and eminent domain action. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Heinrichs. Any more people in the hall here who want to comment on general topics? Ms. Dodson, anyone online?
Yes, Tina Dickinson.
Ms. Dixon?
Thank you. I'm really becoming much more troubled about the lack of transparency, which it seems that every person who wants to run for the district and then gets elected runs on more transparency, and yet we're seeing, I think, less of it. The fact that we keep having these agendas with materials added at the last minute, even prior or after the 24 hours, it just doesn't. Well, I mean, I'm wondering why it is that staff can't get their act together and do it as it should be done. That's one thing. Another is there's been no mention of any response from county planning on the draft WRF project description that I understood would be coming before the public in April. I submitted a CPRA to Coastal Commission staff requesting any communication between Coastal, CCSD, and county planning in reference to that item. Yesterday, I received comments from Coastal staff that were sent to Mr. McElhaney, Commission staff, and county planning staff. I then asked two CSD board directors if this information had been shared to them by the general manager. I was told no. This morning, I forwarded the public records response that I received from coastal staff to the entire board, as I believe it should have been sent by General Manager McElhaney. This isn't the first time that I, as a member of the public, through a CPRA, to agencies, have received information, significant information, important information, to the board that was not sent to them by a general manager. The two prior general managers where this happened also with. I would hope that the current general manager would realize that he's beholden to the board. His boss is the board, and that he needs to communicate with them in a much more appropriate manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dickinson. Any other online comments? No. Any
No,
written?
sorry.
Oh,
no.
sorry. Oh,
But I do have one written
yeah,
comment to
yeah,
read.
I was gonna, any written comments?
Yes, from Jim McConnell. I urge the Cambria Community Services District Board to refuse to adopt a resolution of necessity to commence the eminent domain process against the Coast Unified School District. The board should instead direct the general manager to compromise with Coast Union School District by reaching a mutually acceptable extension of the lease agreement for the service district's continued use of the school district's property. Jim McConnell.
Thank you. Now, that item, that comment, you could also, that will serve as a comment on the closed session agenda as well.
Sure.
Sure, thank you. Any other comments in writing?
No.
Okay, thank you. To move on, let's take up item 7C, and I will turn it over to General Manager McElhaney, and I think our finance manager, to introduce the item. And we have the auditor here online to answer questions. So General Manager McElhaney.
Thank you, President Gray. Agenda item 7C, receive and file the independent auditor's report for fiscal year 22-23. The board approved the Fourth Amendment to the consultant service agreement on July 20th, 2023. We just recently completed the audit. And at this point, we have the auditor on the line, and I can also turn it over to Ms. Fritz if there's any clarification, further clarification needed.
Ms. Fritz, would you want to say anything in advance of Mr. Hom? Okay. So Mr. Hom, who is our auditor, Alexander Hom, with Moss, Levy, and Hartzheim, should be on the line, and I'll turn it over to him.
Sounds good. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alex Hom, Moss, Levy, Hartzheim. We gave the district an unmodified clean opinion. In terms of what's different in the audit report this year from last year, it's essentially almost status quo, except for, the normal activity within the district. We added the certificates of participation into the long-term liabilities. And one of the things I mentioned last year was how the net pension liability essentially dipped down last year because it's based on the 2021's numbers. So this year's the pension liability is based on June 30, 2022's, which again, like 21's the stock market was red hot and everything. So then in terms of CalPERS investments, they were doing really, really well. So thus the liability went down. And then 22 essentially became back to reality type of thing. The stock market pretty much plummeted essentially. So now the liability is kind of where it was like 2 years prior to that. So it's kind of back to normal. This may be slightly a little higher, but essentially it's roughly around the same amount. So that's why you see the increase of about close to 4 million in net pension liability, mainly primarily because of the valuation of PERS's investments at the time of valuation. Other than that, there was one finding. Essentially, it was pretty much just kind of a misinterpretation of kind of the general manager's vacation, and he was getting he was getting shorted just slightly on terms of his vacation. Instead, he was being treated as kind of like a first year employee versus like in the contract it kind of stated it out to be he instead of getting 3 weeks he was getting 2 according to the system. So then there's just misinterpretation there, and other than that, any questions regarding the audit report or the audit process in general.
Thank you. Before I turn this over to questions, I want to make sure I got something right, because I think last week and in my report from the Finance Committee meeting, I said this was a modified clean opinion, and in reference to that vacation accrual issue you mentioned.
Yeah.
You said unmodified, right? Now,
Correct.
Because yeah.
It's unmodified. So the finding doesn't change that, because of the
Okay.
thing is, it didn't. When you give a modified opinion, it usually means there's something horribly wrong with the financials numbers themselves.
Mhm.
And in this case, it's just much more of a process. Like the finding is much more for like kind of a process type of thing.
Yeah.
Finding.
So I think I stand corrected, and it might be due to my faulty hearing. So yeah, an unmodified clean opinion for the record, and just to correct my record from last week. Now I'll turn things over to questions from the directors. I think Vice President Scott has her.
Yes, thank you,
Light on.
Mr. President. Tell me how you spell your last name.
HOM.
HOM. Okay. Mr. Hom, I have a question for you. I have policy committee members who are interested in seeing a financial balance sheet that shows assets versus liabilities. Can you show me which page in this audit that they would find that information?
Okay, so then there's a little bit of specifics that needs to be involved here. So in terms of overall of the district or individual by the funds, like, water, sewer, or
No, overall.
the overall? Okay.
Yes.
Let me point that out.
It's the
Okay, I don't know what page numbers in your PDFs or anything, but I'll give you in terms of the page in the actual report itself, it's page 11 of the report.
statement of net position, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And that'll show the assets, liabilities, and everything. And not to try to be too technical here, but it's essentially how in the financial statements you see here, there's two different versions of how governments disclose their financials. So this page 11 here is how normal GAAP accounting, you would see the business world would use their accounting. And so it shows pretty much everything in terms of how a normal place would show accounting. And then the second version of it is governmental. And then you see that little further down in, like, if you see assets, liabilities further down, that's usually in reference to the general fund specifically. That's what you call governmental accounting. So that's not going to show like long-term assets, long-term liabilities, and stuff like that. So that's what. So it gives you much more of a shorter perspective, a shorter year perspective on it. While this page 11 shows kind of the overall big picture of it, of the whole district.
So just let me restate part of the question, and that is, what about our loans?
It's on there.
Is
in there.
it here?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
This shows big picture everything.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, that's page 205 on the agenda. People are looking on their agendas.
Yeah.
Dr. Dean.
I've also heard people on the policy committee.
Oh, you get the mic closer, yeah.
I've also heard some of the policy committee members ask, how do we know how much debt the CCSD is carrying? And that has always been note 6 in the audit reports every year. And in this agenda packet, it is pages 32 through 34 that shows all of our outstanding debt. And I appreciate the fact that that's in this document. It's agenda packet
Right.
numbers.
On the agenda packet is 226.
2229.
Yeah, 229, right, exactly.
And it includes the COP, the certificates of participation for the wastewater SST.
Is each debt, essentially, each debt specified as to principal and interest and so forth. Good, thank you. Mr. Hom, do you have any more answer to that question, essentially? Or those questions about, yeah.
No further answer for that.
Director Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, President Gray. I have a few questions, and one at a time for clarity. But on page 3 or 197 of the packet, I stumble over the list of services that is provided here, and I need to understand why in the audit report we list the services different from the way CCSD lists our services on the website, and different from the way different from the LAFCO assignment of services to the CCSD. I mean, where does this list come from, and why is it structured this way?
Oh, okay, so this part of the audit report from pages 3 to, let's see, 3 to 10, that is what you call the management discussion and analysis. And that is essentially written by management to pretty much give their opinion, or not opinion, but like terms of how the year went and fiscally and everything like that. So what we do as auditors for this part of the report, we just make sure it makes sense to an extent, like numbers wise, and just like make sure they're not going too far off in terms of fact. In terms of, we don't fact check everything on it in terms of like what they list off and everything like that, but in terms of making sure it makes sense, because it's management's opportunity to pretty much give their tale of the audit. So that's much more directed towards Denise and the district.
Okay, my question stands.
Yeah, Denise, I was, Ms. Fritz, yeah, I also wanted to mention that I had asked this question in the Finance Committee being about the term resource conservation. And I think there was an answer to that, but.
And in addition, facilities and resources, I mean, in the list of services, 3 of these are department. I mean, 2 of them are departments. One is an activity. Only 4 of them are, LAFCO designated services. So, yeah.
Yeah, Ms. Fritz.
So the exact question is about
the
resource
question is-
conservation, or
Well,
why are these not similar? Because so.
Why they're not similar, I guess.
Yeah. So, I mean, this report has been written for years, and it's a template. And so my first year being the audit, I used the template from last year, which has been in use for many years. And resource conservation is a department within the water department. So it does have a small budget allocated towards conservation measures within. Why they listed it out here as a singular department, and then the question of whether, water, wastewater, it's a department, it's also a service. So I guess, I feel like if we want to have a nuanced discussion on what should be in this report, maybe that should be done at the Finance Committee to hash out. Like I said, this is a longstanding document, so we can go, if the services have changed over the years, or doing a detailed analysis of where we have these services listed, whether it's in LAFCO or on the website or everything else. I didn't do that analysis of making sure those were all in alignment. So we can do that for next year, and if we want to. But there is a department within water that is titled Resource and Conservation, and it has budget line items in it, which I can point out in the 3rd quarter budget report when that comes before the board next month. It's a very small budget allocated to those services. Yes.
Thank you. Any more questions, Dr. Thomas?
Yeah, several. So I guess we get this right next year. Is that the plan? To me, it's obviously incorrect, but
I think that the practical thing to do is to aim at a more maybe a description that fits the way we describe our services elsewhere. But that could be, I don't think this as a reason to hold up the audit this time.
No. Okay. So as long as that's noted. Also curious on the next page, the statement, I guess Mr. Hom is going to direct that back to us. I'm curious where it says, and this is, in two places in the report, but the statement of net position provides the basis for computing the rate of return. And that strikes me as odd as I reflect that we don't generate profit. None of our accounts can generate a profit, and rate of return is only relevant in terms of whether there's profit or loss. So I'm trying to understand, is that the way all districts
I would say that
state
enterprise
this?
funds do have rates of return because our goal is not to have a net zero. Our goal is to fund long-term maintenance. So in that aspect, that it would, have a rate of return. So,
Yeah. I don't know, Mr. Hom, do you have anything to add to that?
Trying to find this which page is it on
Oh,
the
it's
report?
it's in page 4 of the MD&A and page 198 on the agenda packet. I think it's page 4 on the PDF.
Yeah, page 4 and again on page 6.
I got it. I agree with Denise. It's definitely more aligned towards what probably just more phrasing wise, because like when they say the statement net position and you see it more as kind of overall, I don't rate of return, you can make the argument for it, but like I think what they're trying to say is like reserves and being able to fund future projects and what. I think that's what they probably really meant by that.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, excess cash flow.
Yeah.
Okay. And what will be our engagement next year? Because typically we get it at the stage where it's done. And so at this point, sort of the instructions to me as a director is, well, there's errors in here. Well, we can't correct them. We'll do it next year. And next year it'll come to the finance committee and we'll say the same thing. So how do we shape, things like this?
Ms. Fritz?
I think the finance committee is the place to hash out, as far as Alex's report, which starts on the auditor's report, which starts on page 11, we can't change that. That's the auditor's report. That's what we pay them for. It's their independent opinion. So everything from page 1 to 10 is a document that we create in the district. And I would think the finance committee would be the place. I mean, I don't typically share this with board members before it's like in the process of creating it. So I would say at the finance committee is where, and I'd have to think about that at what point Alex is actually, because he's getting this pages 1 through 10 to finalize his report. So maybe if we wanted to work into the process that there's some sort of board of director review of the MD&A before it gets submitted to the auditor, that has not been part of our process. And so I would leave that to you all to establish rules surrounding that, because that is not the case. I think by the time it gets to the finance committee, it already has been submitted to Alex for a final report.
That's a great idea to have some engagement in that.
Well,
I ask myself questions like, well, what would Christine say, or what would Tina say?
Well,
And,
we'll take public comment in a moment.
The management discussion is incorrect. And so how should I feel about the remainder of the document?
May I interrupt?
Mr. Hom, yeah, Mr. Hom.
I kind of disagree with bringing the MD&A to the board, because primarily the purpose of the MD&A is it's management's discussion and analysis. And then the whole point of the audit report is the board hires the auditors to give a report to the board. And it's management's numbers, it's management's everything. So then the MD&A probably should not be reviewed or anything from the board, because it's supposed to be management's words and management's opinions. And if the board, then is it really management discussion analysis if the board reviews it and then puts their 2 cents into it too? So it kind of it I wouldn't say it discourage it's not the purpose of it to have the board look at it.
Yeah, fair enough. That, then it could end up getting political.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
So our only point of leverage is the performance management with the general manager. That seems, a remote linkage, but
Any more questions?
I'll drop the rest
Okay,
because
great.
they're not going to get anywhere,
Great,
apparently.
thank you. Well, anybody else have any questions or of the auditor or Ms. Fritz? I'll open up this topic to public comment. Anybody in the, I don't believe I have a slip. So anyone in the hall here want to comment on the report? I'm sure this, and Ms. Dodson, do you have anybody online?
Yes, Tina Dickinson.
Okay. Ms. Dickinson?
Thank you. And I would like to thank Director Scott and Thomas for raising some questions, and especially with what Director Thomas just had to say or have questions about. I think if information isn't provided to the board at large, then how can reasonable questions be addressed and maybe improve upon what I've just listened to? Again, I just feel that the lack of transparency is overwhelming in not just one area, but many areas. And I do not feel that the questions that were asked were addressed to those directors or to anybody else who might be wondering, like myself, but rather that they were evasive. And that's not what I expect. That's not what any ratepayer should expect. We need answers that are definable, that answer the question, and that directors aren't wondering, well, gee, is this going to happen again next year? And it comes before us before any changes can be made. So thank you, Director Thomas, for addressing this. And I would hope that some changes will be made going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dickinson. Anyone else online?
No.
Okay. We've had questions and public comment. Thank you, Mr. Hom, for helping us out in this one. At this point, I will turn it over to the board for discussion and a motion.
One further comment I wanted to
Yeah, Dr. Thomas.
Have we, I may have missed it, but have we pointed out that Mr. Hom has conducted 5 audits for the district, and I didn't look at the books 5 years ago, but from what I've learned, the books were not in the level of order they are today. And so, kudos to Ms. Fritz, kudos to her predecessor, and huge kudos. I understand that, if I've got it right, it's just 4 years, but you had to do double duty on one of those years, and that's all correct. Just a world of thanks.
Yeah. Second that, actually, and I think the way we're calculating it, Mr. Hom did 5 years worth of audits in 4 years, and this would be, I think, if that's the case, that this is his last time, at least for the foreseeable near future, as our individual auditor, and we'll have it done by another partner, I think, or another auditor this next time around. But yes, he came into a situation where we were way behind on audits and remedied it quite effectively, I think. So I appreciate that. Any other discussion? I'll entertain a motion. Director Farmer.
Yeah, actually, I just want to make a comment on what was just said. I do remember when this event, when the previous auditor, all of a sudden it came to our awareness that this person was like incompetent. And Mr. Hahn's agency was called upon, and they were here like yesterday. They were here so quickly and took care of the problem as rapidly as they possibly could with no difficulty at all. And like I said, as you know, I haven't made any comments here because this is not my forte. I just remember how they kind of saved our keister. Be the best way to describe it. I just wanted to comment on that. Thank you.
Uh, I will say one thing though. It's a two-way street. Pam really wanted to fix everything, and she wasn't afraid to pick my brain on certain things that she needed help with. And again, like to fix what she had to fix, like it is definitely a two-way street. She wanted it to fix it too. So Pam deserves due too.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And she spearheaded the effort to get everything straight and stuck with it for several years. Again, back to the board. Vice President Scott.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I move to receive and file the independent auditor's report for fiscal year 2022, 2023. And in addition, I would like to encourage the management to review the management discussion and analysis and bring it up to current information.
Is there a second on that?
So,
I'm a little confused.
well, I will second that.
Second, okay, for discussion. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Just before Director Dean, you were.
Well, I just wondered if we could add that extra part to the motion, since it's not on here. Yeah. I mean, I agree, but.
I agree, and I guess the question is this for the future MDNAs to make them updated? I think it's if we're saying to review the especially the template and the terminology and those things, you know, in the meantime, I think that makes sense. I don't know, Mr. Carmel, is that acceptable? Is to add that onto the motion?
I think this is just a straight receive and file.
Okay. So we receive and file. We can't actually add direct staff to do anything. Vice President Scott.
Yes, and I didn't mean to direct, I just meant to encourage. So let me restate the motion.
Yeah.
I move to receive and file the independent auditor's report for fiscal year 2022, 2023.
Second.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we receive and file the independent auditor's report for fiscal year 2022-23. Roll call, please.
Vice President Scott,
Aye.
Director Dean,
Aye.
Director Thomas,
Aye.
Director Farmer,
Aye.
President Gray.
Aye. Yeah, thank you. We'll switch back up towards the front of the agenda now for managers' reports, starting with the general manager's report. Mr. McElhenney.
Thank you, President Gray. Sorry, flipping back to the top again.
All right.
Okay, thank you. So for the general manager report, I would like to start off with giving kudos to Ms. Fritz. This was her first audit, and so these MDNAs that were there had been existed and made it through several other audits. So while we will take that encouragement and work on it, I do want to give her some kudos, because when we first arrived here and she was working on doing her first audit, there was some hair being pulled out and there was some stress, and she did a phenomenal job. So I do want to give her some commendation for that. So thank you. The CDP discussion, while this general manager report was due and was posted last week, I can provide some clarity on some of the discussions with the county and the Coastal Commission. On Tuesday morning, around 11:42 a.m., we finally received comments back from the Coastal Commission. On Tuesday at 11:47 a.m., 5 minutes later, I emailed President Gray, Director Dean, who are the ad hoc committee, along with council, that email. I have been working in lockstep with our ad hoc committee with the CDP. Now, I did not forward it to the rest of the directors, but we're kind of still formulating our approach with this with the ad hoc committee, and rather than send information that when we meet with our consultant and make adjustments to our project description, some of those comments may or may not be accurate or valid anymore. But we're definitely not bearing the lead. I'm working in lockstep with with our ad hoc committee, and our communication is open and clear. So I just wanted to touch base on that. But we did receive some good comments from the Coastal Commission. We immediately sent those to our consultant. We are setting up a meeting to analyze those, that feedback. We also have some adjustments in our project description since the Coastal Commission has had it, and SWICA has already made adjustments. There's some of the studies that are being done that will inform that project description. And unfortunately, with the Coastal Commission's latest comments, unfortunate and fortunate, we weren't able to bring it before the board in April. We may not make it in May, depending on how much work we need to do to answer some of those questions with the Coastal Commission. That will be an update in my GM letter. Sorry, I couldn't get that in this report, but it just came on Tuesday. So just some clarification there. On Monday, the 22nd, I'll be working out of the Veterans Hall along with the fire chief. Unfortunately, till 1 p.m., I have an MRI follow-up on my shoulder, so hopefully that doesn't result in surgery, but I have to leave a little bit earlier that day, so I apologize for cutting that short. We want to welcome a new employee to our administration department, Scott Steck, who we're extremely happy to have brought on. He was a temporary for us. He's doing a phenomenal job. Staff loves him. He works hard, and he's local, and he's got 30 years of experience, and so he's fantastic. So we're excited to have him aboard. We did have our first annual employee and director barbecue, and I thought that went really well. Sometimes our staff gets a little siloed between the fire department, water and wastewater, facilities and resources, and we were able to all come together and break bread and get to know each other, and there was some funny conversations. Some of our firefighters had never even met some of our administrative staff, so they were putting faces to names, so to speak. So that's great, and we'll continue that practice. We want to welcome our third maintenance technician, Patrick Maloney, who is here today, and Mr. Aguirre will introduce him during his report. We're excited to have him on. Lots of experience there. A little reminder, dogs on the Fiscalini Ranch Preserve. Most of us have heard about the unfortunate dog bite attack that where another dog was killed and a community member's finger was partially bitten off. So I just want to remind folks that when you're on the Fiscalini Ranch, and in general, good practice around the community, keep your dogs on a leash. We'll touch base on that a little bit when we get to our administrative citation agenda item. Cambria Skate Park. Again, we submitted this to be posted before we got the news, but it made it through the Planning Commission 5-0, which we did announce last week, so we're excited for that. We're working through the federal review process, and we're getting very close. Our East Ranch restroom was approved by the board. Its location last week. That permitting is fully complete, so we are cleared for construction there. However, the restroom has been ordered. We got a lead time right now. Mr. Green can correct me. I think we're about 30 weeks out from that arrival. 30 weeks out, so exciting. EV charging station has been relocated. We still need to have its final clearance and permitting. It's got to be inspected. On April 30th, we are restriping the front to meet current code. Our stalls are a little narrower, and with new construction, you got to come up to code on that. We'll also be restriping the Legion's parking stalls in the back there. So we're almost there. Really excited to announce that we are a part of a grant, the Department of Forestry and Fire Protection Forest Health Grant, which is $6.7 million that covers Pico Creek, Covell Ranch, Fiscalini Ranch, and Cambria Ecological Reserve. And we'll be working closely with CAL FIRE and eventually their project manager, and that will help fund maintenance on the ranch for years to come. Which, if anybody's been paying attention to our facilities and resources budget, David's extremely excited because he operates on a razor-thin budget. And so the opportunity to have that grant help fund a lot of those things that we spend an incredible amount of money on in his department will start to free up some monies in other areas, perhaps the Vets Hall, but more to come on that. But very excited for that, and we'll have more updates. Once again, we have a homeowners insurance public service announcement that's on the fire department website. So if anybody's having issues with fire insurance, there is a plethora of information on there for all different circumstances. As the chief touched base on, our fire hazard fuel reduction program is underway. and we're out for RFPs for the contractors. The chief and I are meeting with fire department staff this week to go over how we're going to be inspecting parcels using our new Fulcrum app within an iPad that can evaluate the parcels, take pictures, note exactly why they failed, and that will go into the record. And we will use that moving forward for the public nuisance list. Once we've selected the contractor, and once that deadline is passed, our fire department is going to go immediately out the next day. Staff are going to be working overtime, and we're going to canvass the entire community and deal with those parcels. And if they did not pass, they will be placed on the public nuisance list. So this year, we're going to be operating rather swiftly with our fire hazard fuel reduction program. And with that, I'm open for any questions.
Any questions from the board? Director Farmer.
No, not so much a question. Thank you, President Gray. I just want to express my thanks for a comment under Fire Hazard Fuel Reduction Program up here at the page 10, where it says, keep in mind that the forest helps define Cambria, and we must reduce the fire hazard without destroying its ability to regenerate. Please make every effort to protect seedlings, young native trees, ferns, and brushes by marking them before cutting. And I think I speak for the environment and for everyone in the community that really cares and embraces the beauty that we have around us for that thought being in there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Director Farmer. Any other questions from the board? Seeing none, I'll open this to public comment. Is there anyone who wishes to comment on the general manager's report in the hall here? Anyone online?
Yes, Tina Dickinson, followed by Elizabeth Bettenhausen.
Ms. Dickinson.
Yes, thank you, President Gray. I had hoped that the public would learn of a report from county planning to do with the WRF draft project description. And so since, I'd assumed that would be in the one of the April agendas, that didn't happen. But what's troubling is that, I've written to county actually, and I'm awaiting a response to find out what it was, if anything, that they have brought back to the CCSD based on, from what I believe, the project description was sent to county. There's been, it's just all kind of hush hush. We don't know where this is at, even though there's this big lead up to it. We're not being made at all familiar with what actually is taking place. And so, again, it's like, okay, who do you go to find out information related to CCSD if you can't get it from the CCSD? So I would appreciate General Manager McElhaney letting us know if he indeed has heard from county planning on that, on the WRF project description, and if so, what issues, if any, county has brought up that need to be addressed, because suddenly there's a delay since that was sent to county. And so I certainly would like to be made aware of any issues that have brought up. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dickinson. Ms. Bettenhausen was up?
Yes,
Yes,
Elizabeth Bettenhausen.
Ms. Bettenhausen.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I am quite confused because Mr. McElhaney brought up the first item under the utilities and staff manager chart, which has to do with the CDP for the coastal development permit for the WRF. And I am a little, well, I'm more than confused. Let me say why. The chart mentions two things: another conversation with Gus Yates about something that happened in 2022, and continuing conversations unspecified as to content with the Coastal Commission and with Tom Lester. But now we hear in the oral report, which was not in the written comments, that there were more comments made by the Coastal Commission on Tuesday, and they were forwarded only to the ad hoc committee, not to anybody else. And we learned that there were adjustments made in the CDP, but we don't know what they were. Friends, please let the public know what is going on. Let the public know the specifics of what goes to the ad hoc committee. The ad hoc committee is private, perhaps, or secretive, but it is managed by the people. And if you don't let us know what's going on, we come back week after week, month after month, with the same basic comments in public comment. I would like to know, what is Tom Lester saying? I would like to know what the debate was with, or what the discussion was about with Mr. Yates. I would like to know a little more. So please fill us in on the nature of the discussions. And the meeting didn't deal with the CDP this month. Well, maybe next month we hear, but that was a little tentative. It might be June or July. Let us know the details. After 10 years, we deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments online? Any written comment?
No.
Thank you. We'll move on to, I guess Mr. Aguirre has an oral report, because I didn't see a written report in the agenda. So for facilities and resources, Mr. David Aguirre.
How you guys doing, Mr. President and the board? I'm gonna say, it's been a real nice week this week. So a lot of things are growing, and that's the main thing, especially with weed abatement and everything that's been going on in our facilities here. And that's the first subject that I have with our facility side. We're with the weed abatement. As you can tell in the top left-hand corner there, that's actually the service truck that I drive. It is up to the doors on some of the areas that we were starting to mow. So we did already start on the East Ranch, and we started weed whacking a lot of the several CCSD lots. Last time I heard, working with the guys, because I know I gave them the APN book, more or less told them, hey, start at one page, work your way through. As we go through, just keep a tally of everything. I know we're currently looking right there in that 20 mark. But I know with the growth that everything that's going on out here, we're going to be out there quite a few times this year, the way it's looking. With the Fiscalini Ranch, we've been patrolling out there a little bit more since we got a new individual, and also taking a little more time stepping back and evaluating what's going on out there with the down trees and stuff of that nature. We've been reports of people entering the cliffs in the areas. And as you can tell, I have the two gentlemen that we have here, Alberto and also Oscar. They were setting up a barricade. We ended up putting posts in the ground with a cable through it. A lot of them are going down embankments, down to where they're calving the seals. So more or less, it showed up on social media and a couple of different sites where people are actually got some pretty in-depth photos. So working with the Fiscalini, we turned around and put up a barricade, and there's about 2 more locations that we're looking into. We actually put those with a trail closed on those areas in regards of erosion. Also, that's happening in those areas there. The fire breaks, I know that's the biggest concern that we have right now because fawning season's coming around. So what we're doing, we were supposed to start this last month. We ended up having some issues, catastrophic failures in some of our pieces of equipment. So it delayed us here about 2.5, 3 weeks. So we are looking into getting those started here in the first portion of May. One of the concerns, like I said, is about the fawns. So what we're going to be doing is actually going out with the ATV, doing laps, more or less patrolling that area to see if there's anything been born or anything in those areas, because we do not want to take a life of that with a mower. That'd be a bad ordeal. So that's one thing that we're going to be doing here beginning of next month. With the trails and the open spaces, as you can tell, you really can't. The picture on the right has a big old rock in the middle of a trailhead. One of the reasons that this is we've had an individual utilize this walking trail for an ATV, Jeep, and a tractor going up and down it. So it just happens Mother Nature dropped this one off of Burton, so we picked it up and relocated it. So it was in the perfect placement of a non-driving trail that we have here, right there on the outside of the park. We've been working pretty good on keeping the spaces pretty clear with the down trees and branches. The photos here on this one was actually of the East Ranch next to the dog park. This one came down at the beginning of this week, and we went ahead and took care of it. We actually hauled that one out more than anything else. We didn't really do a lot of chipping. It was more or less the guys collaborating together, a little bit of training too, also watching the guys going through. Alberto's actually stepped up quite a bit, monitoring where we are with the new guys, and reporting back to me, and then I've been taking reports with him about where their placement and stuff. It's been real decent, real good collaboration between Alberto and I and with the guys. Moving forward, the work is going to be still consisting of the CCSD lots. That's the biggest thing that they've been out doing with the third man on the ground is make a big difference. I know we picked up those 197 acre lots, and I know we're taking them on. I know that's something that we usually don't do. We usually contract out. So the guys, you know, they're buckling down, and we're actually tackling that pretty good. They're keeping a good task of everything, the before and after pictures. That's the main thing. So that's our main focus here for the next couple of months. And plus, you know, we'll jump on every small project that comes up, especially for our department, and make sure everything's being met for the district and the benefit of the community. The next thing is going to be our new hiree, Patrick. I want to go ahead and introduce him here at the end. He is from Cambria. He was selected for our crew after going through quite a few interviews and applications. With his experience and knowledge, it's nice to see that our department is going to be flowing really well with the workforce that we have. There's a lot of responsibility in our department, and I see with this individual, we'll be moving forward in a smooth manner. That's the main thing. I'll take any questions or comments at this point, and then I'll have him come up.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Director Thomas.
Yeah, just, from the volunteer work I do on Piscataway Ranch Preserve, kudos. David, you've, how responsive you've been, and really bringing a lot of hope to the volunteers on the ranch. I hear them cheering every time they see a new area that staff has cleared, so thanks for that.
I do have to say, you know, the crew, anything going out, you know, listening to what the public has, and a lot of the committees and the volunteer, taking into consideration of everything of that nature, I go out and relay it to the guys, and they're very receptive to everything that, you know, that we're trying to do out there for everybody in the long run. It's I owe it to the crew.
Yep.
So, yeah. Okay, Patrick?
Bring Patrick forward, because I was asking if any more questions. I don't think there are, so please.
Okay.
So they have the introductions here.
Hi everyone, I'm Patrick. Like David said, I'm from the Central Coast here. I'm really excited to be working with the CSD. I'm currently going to Cuesta for plant science. I have experience with heavy equipment, weed abatement. Yeah, I look forward to working here.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, great. I have one public comment slip from Christine Heinrichs on, this is 5B, this is the one that you wanted to do, right?
Actually, I had 5B as the finance manager.
Okay, so we'll pick it up then. Any public comment on the resources and facilities?
No.
Okay, great. Now we'll move along to the finance manager, Ms. Fritz.
Thank you, President Gray. Along with the normal reportings with compensation for the directors, our cash balances, General Manager mentioned that we have a new permanent employee, Scott Stack. He decided to take a few days off this week before he pledges his life to the district. So he's not here for me to introduce, but he is a great addition. you remember, we did a reorganization in the administration department at the beginning of the year, and we actually reduced our number of staff. And even with that reduction, this is the first time since I've been here that we actually have all of those positions filled with permanent employees. So I'm very excited about that. And hopefully, we've reshuffled duties in that reorganization. And so we have our accounts payable technician, Rochelle Benjamin, who just came on permanently, Miriam Torres, who's been with me throughout, and she is our, billing supervisor, as well as doing payroll and helping me with some of the more monthly and day-to-day tasks of bank reconciliation, so I can focus more on long-range planning and our investments and projects and that sort of thing. And then Scott is taking over our front desk, as well as he's being trained, the billing responsibility, so I can, train Miriam to help me with more and more stuff. He's really a great addition to the staff. So if you haven't come in and met him, he is a Cambria local. He worked for years up at Hearst Castle, so a lot of people know him from working there, and so we're really excited to have him. One other thing I wanted to point out is that the LEWOP program has ended. So we've had that on our report for quite a while as a program to benefit our residents who are having difficulty paying their bill, but it is no longer being offered. And so at this point, it has sunset, and I will be taking it off of the finance manager's report going forward. And I'm available for any questions.
Any questions from the board? Yeah, Mr. Thomas, Director Thomas.
Just got to say, yes, I can't remember an org chart I've seen without the word open positions, so congratulations.
Yeah. I had a question on the LEWOP program, actually. How does this program interface with our assistance or our program for water sewer rates, wastewater rates specifically, and now trash rates, trash collection rates? We have that discount program. Do these people who are on the LEWOP program, are they eligible for that, or are they already receiving the benefit of that?
So our discount is tied to, if I believe, and Miriam knows more, and I can get information if I can't adequately answer the question, but our discounts are, as well as for the trash discount too, is tied to if they're eligible for a PG&E
Right.
discount. So the LEWOP has nothing to do with
Right.
those discounts going forward.
Yeah. Though it's conceivable that people who are on this program could apply for the
Yes.
PG&E program.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's my question. Any other questions? I'll turn it over to public comment, and we do have, this is Ms. Heinrichs wanted to comment on this item. Ms. Heinrichs.
Thank you. On the finance manager's report, I'd like clarification as to the investment report for the last quarter of 2023, which was presented at the last meeting. While the increased income from the $18 million in reserves is welcome, about half that, over $9 million, is actually the money from the certificates Cambria sold, which means Cambria is paying interest on those. So how does the income on those funds compare with what it's costing Cambria to be in debt? It's like we borrowed money and we're paying interest on it, and now we're collecting interest on it. So I'm kind of confused. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Ms. Fritz.
So the investments that I reported on do not include any earnings from the certificates of participation. So we are paying interest in the terms of the debt service that we're paying, but again, the income earnings that I reported on are just with our unrestricted and restricted, let me see, I'm sorry, I don't have the report right in front of me, but the restricted Bank of New York Mellon balance here, which is 8.8 million. So any of those restricted funds were not included in those investments. It's only the unrestricted, which is our money market account, our LAIF, our CAMP balance, and the U.S. Bank Investment Fund.
Yeah. So just so clarified for my sake too, the amount we raised with the COPs or the certificates of participation are set aside in a special fund, not, that's separate from anything we invest from our reserves.
Correct. And we can invest those funds to earn money, but anything earned if we invest our certificate of participation funds as we're waiting to spend it would go towards a debt service payment. It cannot be used in any other way besides to reduce that debt service payment. There is a trustee that manages and even manages how we can invest that money. So it would be good for us to invest it, which we're working on. But again, any of those proceeds would just reduce the debt service payment that's owed.
And our plan is to spend it fairly soon. Yeah, fairly, without.
Fairly soon,
You don't want,
yes.
we're not holding it for 20 years or so.
Yeah, I do have cash flows from PG&E, but it's still, we could invest it for the next year or two and reduce the last debt, a debt service payment is usually how that works.
Thank you. Director Thomas.
So that means the earnings from the the investment returns being 3 times what they were in the same quarter last year, more than 3 times, is even bigger than I thought because it doesn't include the COP. Whew. Nice work.
Any further questions? Any further public comment, either online or in the room?
No.
Okay, great. I'll move on to the utilities report. We can take it, Mr. McElhaney or Mr. Green, who wants to start?
I'll take it. Thank you,
Great.
President
Mr.
Gray.
Green.
Appreciate it. Utilities report for March of this year. We'll start off with the wastewater. Some of this dates back to our February dates where we had over 18 days of rain and 18 days straight of basically 1 million gallons coming into the plant. So the majority of the first half of April was kind of getting our plant back online, getting the processes back online. The south digester that we've had basically inoperable for a while, which recently was just evaluated by MKN and Southland, which is part of our SST program, so that had to be drained. Well, due to those 18 million gallons in February, we had to fill up that digester and decant some of our finishing ponds. So as soon as we got the February's kind of woes bandaged and healed up, the last weekend of March was a doozy for us. In 2 days, we got 2.5 million gallons. Again, having to put that back into the southern digester for processing. So it was a lot of plant work and a lot of processing, and a lot of that rainwater that we took on is due to our I&I, our infiltration and intrusion in our wastewater system. The plant is back up to running, back to spec right now, and the south digester has been, like I said, drained and then inspected here recently as part of the kickoff to our SST program. Also, if you guys notice on page 18, we started working on our Coleman gear drive. So that's our screw press. So that's what presses our waste and gets it small and concentrate, and then we haul off. As you can see, that 20-year-old operation motor needed a little bit of love, so we went and replaced it and changed some other things on the screw press, like our reduction gears, chain drives, all those exciting things like bushings and bearings to get that thing running in square for operation. Also during the month, I'll give many thanks to Program Director Tristan Reaper and Tony Artho and myself. We spent a good probably 3 weeks working on our new general waste discharge requirement order, which is ordered and has been due For years for updating from regional water. We submitted that. I think there was, what, a good 100 attachments attached to that 67-page document. So that was a notice of intent and then the actual permit that we submitted to it. We haven't gotten much response back yet from regional water. As far as completion, I'm sure we'll have some more contributions and attachments to submit to them. They said the response time for that is about 4 to 6 weeks out, so I look forward to bringing you that completed report probably by June. Also, we had some drier days during March, so we were able to actually get out in our collection system and clean and take care of about 1.25 miles of sewer line. So that was a fantastic operation for us and keeping our grease alley clean here and operating. In water department, we had our first kind of smallish leak of the year. It was a service line. It was difficult to locate due to being on a hill on Croydon. So we got to use our locating equipment, which located it right away. We were able to get down to it, isolate the leak and repair and actually replace that full service line in that afternoon. Other activities in water, staff also cleaned out and did some preventive maintenance at our backwash and clear well tanks there in preparation for our Santa Rosa processing, which is coming up here in May. Also at the start of March, we're kind of finishing up that bill cycle read for our billing cycle, and staff manually read 2,200 meters across our community. On that note, I'll also add that have placed our initial order of 1,700 endpoint replacements for our meter. We'll take receipt of that May 30th. That's a confirmed date. From then on, we'll be starting to replace that in-house and also flying an RFP, request for proposal for installation of those as well. We took advantage also of some of the drier days in March and did some grounds maintenance and took care of some downed trees. Want to give a huge thanks to F&R staff who helped with chipping and the processing there. So we're doing less hauling of that landscape waste and paying to dispose of it, and use some of that chipping and others for landscaping cover. Also, while we have kind of this wetter weather and our aquifers are full, it's a great time to get out and exercise hydrants and flush our system for water quality, maintaining our disinfection residual, and taking some other bacteriological samples and pressure testing and all that other things that we do while we have the opportunity. I'd like to highlight Adam Stevenson, who stepped up years ago and got his backflow certificate. The district owns and maintains 17 backflows here. You see the very large 12-inch one that we have out front of here. Adam does all the evaluation, inspection, and he's able to sign off on those as being a state certified backflow inspector. Initially, we got into that to save the district some money. We were spending about $100 a backflow to have them tested. Now those backflow inspection reports are about $200, so they've over doubled in the couple of years that we've got it. So that training and education that we provided Adam has more than paid off for us financially, and it's also able to repair those in-house, which saves an additional cost for repair. That pretty much sums up everything for water and wastewater report, and I'm available for questions or comments. Thank you.
First of all, any questions from board members? Vice President Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to say thank you, because now I know exactly what's new on this utilities and engineering project summary table. Very well done. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Any more questions? The lack of the scarcity of questions means it was a high quality report because you answered everybody's questions in advance. It's good.
Thank you.
Director Dean.
And I agree with what you just said. It was very well done report. Thank you.
I mean, the presentation of the project summary is greatly enhanced, greatly improved from what it was a few months ago. So it was a very good job.
Yeah, and could I add?
Mr. Thomas.
The general manager has boardwalk, a meeting with each director for each of the meetings, and the myriad of technical questions I have that might put someone else to sleep, I'm able to get that information during those boardwalk discussions. So thanks to the general manager and Mr. Green and et al. For that.
With no further questions, I'll turn this over to public comment. We have a speaker slip from Christine Heinrichs.
Yes, and thank you for keeping us going when those on those very rainy days and keeping the plant going, even though it's due for all these upgrades. The one question I had was, in the SST update, the report notes that the new plant generator has been approved and ordered and will be here in 48 weeks or so. I marked my calendar. Can we know more about this? It sounds like a major piece of equipment. What is it? How much did it cost? Were there competitive bids? How does it fit into the wastewater treatment plant improvements and the SST program? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Heinrichs. Any other comment from those present? Any comment online?
Yes, Tina Dickinson.
Ms. Dickinson, please.
Thank you. I would like to know, through you, President Gray, to Mr. Green, why has the number of manual reads escalated from around 500 not too long ago to 2,200? That's more than half of the town's water meters. So that's quite amazing. And then I would also ask, since we're upgrading the meters, is there any way that the water meters, when they're being read, can actually calculate the actual amount that is being reported after that reading every 2 months, instead of, rounded off to whatever number of units? That it be more like our other utilities, electric and gas, where you actually get exactly a reading of exactly what you've used for that time period. That would really be helpful, instead of this rounding off all the time, because we're not getting a clear reading of what we've actually used. Thank you.
Thank you. The question that I think we will be talking about more, I think item 7D, is it? When we talk about the meters, but the question of why has been such a huge increase in the direct reads. Mr. Green, you might want to, we've talked about this before, you might want to reiterate.
Sure, I'll
what the
address that.
situation is.
So
Yeah.
we've been reading over 2,000 meters for well over a year. There hasn't been a sudden increase, and it's been noted in all of our documentation and staff reports.
Yeah. And it's parts of the problem. The problem is the meters, the part that transmits the information needs to be replaced.
Yeah, we
register.
we had a spike or a sharp increase back in 2020. So.
And there was another question. What was the? Oh, that's an interesting one. That's a little more in the future. It is the when we get to more like smart building, essentially, and more precise measurement of use. I guess the question is, can bills be based on that? Now they're based, of course, on the every 100 units.
So I've been longing for this AMI for so long, and because we'll get such detail in billing. Yeah. The customers will always have their portal too, where they can look monthly, weekly, daily, by the 12 hours, and that'll be available to them through a customer portal. And it'll also be more accurate.
So the admin department is teaming with utilities with this project, because there's an integration between Badger, which is the vendor that they've chosen for the meters. And not only will those meters provide utilities the much needed exact information that they need, there's the integration with Tyler. We're also, are working with Tyler to do a whole new merchant services online. So our payment online will be much, much easier, and every customer will have a customer portal through Tyler, through the website, that they can go on and pay their bill, see their usage, and see the detail in that way. So we're really excited about it, and that's why some of these things can are intricate and take time. And so it's going to be a win-win for both departments and the community. And that is, we're hoping to have the online portion through Tyler active June 1st. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I misspoke slightly because I said 100 units. 100 cubic feet is the standard. Yeah, that's a unit. And it's by units. It's basically the take off the two numbers after it.
And you'll see that much more articulated as soon as we roll out this AMI. So just please,
Great.
have some patience and while we get out there and physically install them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment?
No.
Okay. Well, yes, but I was saying, we're going to take a little longer, 15-minute break. We're reconvening about 2:46, and then we'll take the rest of the agenda. Thank you, everybody. So we're ready to go. Ready? Okay, good, thank you. We're reconvening at 2:47 p.m., 2:48 p.m., starting with, or continuing, I should say, with our meeting, with the consent agenda. The principle of the consent agenda is these items are to be considered together in one motion, one vote, unless one of the board members wants to poll one of the items for separate consideration, in which case that one will be picked up, will taken up after the rest of the consent agenda is approved. And we can also ask, the directors can ask short questions for clarification on any of the items. Mr. McElhenney.
President Gray, I'm sorry to interrupt. Andrew from Baker Tilly is going to be leaving at 3 p.m. He's been online.
3 p.m.
I don't know if that's something that you want to move up in the agenda, but I just want to let you know he won't be able to speak if we move past 3.
Well, let's say we'll take up, I think, if with the board's approval, thank you for telling us that, we can take up 7B before the consent agenda. So let's just do that. And we'll have some time, and Mr. Belknap will have some time to comment or answer questions if he wishes. So we have on 7B, which is discussion and consideration of the report and recommendations of the Finance Committee Revenue Enhancement for the General Revenue Enhancement Subcommittee for Revenue Enhancement in the General Fund. We have a presentation by the chair of that subcommittee, David Pearson, and two of the members of the subcommittee are here. So I think I might want to just turn it over to them, unless Ms. Fritz has anything or Mr. McElhenney has anything to say about it. This came out of the Finance Committee. It was developed by the subcommittee, and I think there's as I said, there's a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation that Mr. Pearson will conduct. Is he here now? Here he is. Oh, there's Mr. McCann. We have all the subcommittee members here. I think here he comes. Dave, Mr. Pearson, we because Andy Belknap had to leave at 3, we moved the item up. So please come forward, and Ms. Dodson will have your presentation ready for you. Here it is. So without further ado, I'll turn over the floor to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. President, board members, staff. We had an ad hoc committee, originally consisted of myself and the late Cindy Stidel. Then afterwards, Keith Heinrich and Scott were both added to the ad hoc committee and were of great help in forming this report we have today. This went from the report that the previous Finance Committee did on the fact that we were lacking in revenues, and they looked into it and why and all that kind of stuff. And so this was kind of a follow-up to find out where we could possibly find some revenues. So we can go to the next slide. Do I do that or you do that? Okay, so as an introduction, we're talking only about the general fund here. We're not talking about wastewater and water. We're talking only about the general fund, which consists really of the fire department and the facilities and resource. Okay, the admin department is kind of this nebulous thing that gets fed by everybody else, right? So they're not really accounted also. Revenue sources for the general fund include property taxes, fire prevention assessment, fees, and grants. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit more about each of those as we go along. All right, the challenge that's been identified is the fact that there's an annual budget shortfall. Over the last 3 years, over $800,000 in shortfall in the general fund. And this is coming out of reserves, okay? And if this continues, obviously, we'll go bankrupt. Unfunded maintenance that still exists, even though we have had those shortfalls, includes facilities and maintenance as $490,000 of unfunded maintenance. That does not include the new buildings that they would like to build. The fire department has about $400,000, and that does not include fire engines or include their buildings that they would like to build. There's also the wish list of things that are being generated these days. One of the, of course, the ones from pros that we've seen, East Park Recreation and pedestrian walkways, which are key to furthering the town and are being asked for by the community. And last, and certainly not least, fire prevention officer and program. One of the things I learned at the Fire Safe Council meeting that we had yesterday was that the county has added another layer of fire protection officer on so that they can raise their ISO level. And in doing so, when you raise your ISO rating, that tells the insurance companies that you're doing more for fire prevention. So if we got a fire prevention officer, perhaps the insurance companies would look more favorably on Cambria. Next one slide, please. Options for revenue enhancement include fees, including franchise fees. We have fees. We have fees to use this building here, the franchise fees and others. But remember, those fees have to be based upon the actual cost. You can't make money on fees, okay? If it costs you X amount of dollars to run the Vets Hall, you can add that and have fees. Now, that's true. However, you have to be competitive also. And you have a competitor just down the street here, the Jocelyn Center, that a lot of the community nonprofits, et cetera, use because it's cheaper and more suited for their use. So it's something you need to think about. Assessments, taxes, grants, organizational changes. You can have a new nonprofit. We could reduce the powers that the CCSD has, right? And also incorporation. Next slide, please. Current fees that we have is solid waste, of course, rental of the Vets Hall, electric charging stations soon to come, all right, and others. Once again, must be in line with the services being provided, and we might lose customers if we price it too high. Assessments. There is an assessment that we currently have, and it's for the fire department. Beneficial assessment was done back, I believe, my memory is about 2002. It passed. It's been in effect since then, and it's raised every year by the CPI. So we do have that benefit, and I think it's around $500,000 that we currently get from that. Assessments are on property, and they are collected with property taxes. You need a simple majority to pass an assessment, okay? But the assessment is based on the assessed property votes, all right? So in other words, if you are deemed to have a more benefit from a certain benefit that's being provided, okay? Let's take, for instance, the ranch, okay? If the ranch were the benefit that we were providing, those who lived in the Marine Terrace area would probably be assessed more than those in Happy Hill because it's more closely to them, right? So that they could walk to where there's Happy Hill they would have to drive to. So the people on Marine Terrace would also have a bigger vote, okay? They might get a 1.3 vote compared to a resident in Happy Hill getting a 0.7 vote. so that the voting power is strictly based upon the benefit and the assessment. Okay, again, simple majority, but of those assessed voting, okay? Very complicated. Properties are assessed by benefit. Okay. Questions on assessments, we'll get to those later. Go ahead. Taxes. Okay, taxes, as we know, are limited by Prop 13. They're collected by the county, and a small percentage is given to the district. Okay, about 3% of all the property taxes that are collected by the county go to the special districts. The school districts get a large majority, around 60% of the property taxes go to them. Revenues can rise as property values rise when they're reassessed, but the only time that a property gets reassessed generally is when it sells. And so that amount goes up very little each year, okay? And is not really a great source of income. The district cannot levy general taxes or sales taxes. That is only can be done by cities, not special districts. We can level special taxes. Special taxes must be designated for a specific purpose and take 2/3 of the registered voters' approval. We tried to get a special tax passed for the fire department to fund a 4th firefighter, which currently is being funded by the SAFER grant. But at that time in 2018, it looked like we were going to run out of the SAFER grant. And so this special tax was put on the ballot and it passed. It passed, okay, 53% of the voters approved, but it did not reach by a long shot the 2/3 vote required. Next one. Grants. Grants are great. But they're not a real source of reliable income. We may get some more grants to help out the FNR people with some of the clearing of the lots. There's another grant that's in the works right now, but it would not be something that would be in perpetuity and not something you can rely on. New nonprofit. You could have a new nonprofit for the Vets Hall, Parks and Recreation, Ranch Management. You know, a 501(c) could be formed for any of those. But I attended the last meeting of the Vets Hall ad hoc that was looking into how to get the Vets Hall the money they needed. And as Mr. Clark said, no one seems to have the passion to lead that 501(c), and that's really what's needed in order to have that happen. So I don't think a new nonprofit is going to be in the works. We did go to FFRP and we talked to them about a new nonprofit that would handle just the maintenance of the ranch. And they were not very keen on that because it would take from their fundraising, they felt, and probably so. And they're having a difficult time raising funds now as it is. If you ask any of the nonprofits here in town, they're all having problems raising funds these days. So a new 501(c) is probably not the best idea. Reducing CCSD powers. Those are all the ones we have, and we could try to hand them back to the county, as our neighbors are doing. I don't know if they're going to be successful or not, but they voted earlier this month to move ahead with basically dissolving their CSD. So I don't know how that would work, trying to negotiate less powers. We could also negotiate with the county to try to get more revenue. But as you probably know, the county is hurting for revenue as it is. They had a big budget shortfall this coming year. Again, at the Fire Safe Council meeting yesterday, the Cal Fire chief was there and said that they were cut by 2%. Okay, they're cutting, not adding to. So going to them and asking them for more share of the property tax or some other funds probably would not work. Incorporation is the last item. We would be able to generate new revenue with sales tax, and we would get the transient occupation tax, the TOT. We would get all of the TOT. However, a lot of that, because of the Revenue Neutrality Act, would have to be shared, at least initially, with the county, okay? County currently collects 9%, okay, that goes to their general fund, and that eventually, that would come to us as a city, but they would want to keep most of that, at least initially. At some point, that will decline, okay, and we would get more of that, but initially we wouldn't. However, we could raise the transient occupational tax. Most of the other cities in San Luis have higher TOT than we currently have. During our research, we found that cities in the county charge higher sales tax. Arroyo Grande's sales tax is like 8.25%. Okay, ours is 7.25%. Despite the revenue neutrality law and keeping the county whole, we estimate increasing those taxes. The minimum charged by other cities would increase our revenues by about $1.5 million. And of course, if we raised the TOT tax more or the sales tax more than the minimum those other cities are doing, we would be able to gather more. The raising of taxes would be part of the vote for a new city. If you decide to move forward with this and it ends up at a vote, okay, the vote would be 50% plus one, and it would pass. But part of that vote would be also the taxes that would be needed in order for the city to get off on a good financial start. We only currently benefit, indirectly from TOT taxes. We don't get any of that revenue. We do get property tax from the county, but that's it. Increased costs would give the community more local decision-making. At least initially, we would probably contract with the sheriff's office to take care of law enforcement, and we may just keep that. There's no reason for a town this size to have its own police force, and contracting with the sheriff's office is done by other communities across California. Land use decisions would be local, yes, but still governed by the Coastal Commission. The only thing that would happen is the county would no longer be between ourselves and the Coastal Commission.
Excuse me, I don't want to interrupt, but maybe could you talk about the recommendations? There's 4 recommendations, I noticed. Yeah, good.
Oops. There were 4. All right, our 4 recommendations. The first one is to ascertain exactly what the costs are, okay, for these 2 departments, okay? How much of F&R's time is spent on the Vets Hall, how much time is spent on the ranch, how much time is spent on the other open spaces we have, the parks, et cetera. That's going to be important, especially if you go for a benefit assessment for that. Same thing with the fire department. You need that kind of data, and most of that's probably available from the fire department because they already fill out timesheets, right? But you're going to need that if you go for a benefit assessment anyway, so you might as well do it and have a better grasp on where that's going. We couldn't find an Appendix 4, which kind of is supposed to delineate the difference responsibilities of managing the ranch. And the people at FFRP that we talked to are ready to work with the CCSD on getting that Appendix 5 done. Okay, so that you know exactly what CCSD is supposed to do and what they're supposed to do. Again, if you decide to go for a benefit assessment, that's going to be key to having that document. Last is
Actually,
we recommend a consultant as a first step to look at benefit assessments and incorporation. The reason for that is that both of those are very complex, and you're going to need somebody who has gone through it before to kind of guide you. Okay, certainly LAFCO can help with that, but I think getting a consultant that has done both of those, and I was able to find actually the same fellow who did our most recent incorporation study, which is in 2006, Andy Belknap, who's on the Zoom right now. He was the one that did the 2006 study. And I actually found him with the same firm. It had been swallowed by another corporation, but he's still with the same firm. And so he gave you a proposal, which you have in your packet. I would sit down with him probably and negotiate, what you really need done initially. His is pretty comprehensive, but maybe you only need to do part of that. And his firm has also done beneficial assessments. So you could ask him about that process at the same time. So those are basically the recommendations of our group.
thank you. You have two other members of the subcommittee here, and they wanted to say something too.
Yeah.
Why don't you come forward?
Thank you, President and Board.
It's Keith Hendrickson.
And staff. Yeah, Keith Heinrichsen, newest member of the Finance Committee. Crash course on where to find dollars. All of it, as Scott and I got incorporated into this process with Dave, and started learning how all of this works, it became really painfully obvious that the opportunities that we have to take in and find additional funds are very limited. My cheat sheet's gone. To do the assessment to see who benefits most from what. Boy, that's a hot potato. I can't imagine there won't be fist fights in the parking lot as to who's going to pay for what on all of that. But what I wanted to especially speak to was that our subcommittee, this group of the three of us that spoke through all of this, we don't support incorporation. Or I'll speak for myself. I don't support incorporation. What I believe that we all three support is having to do the study to see if it makes sense. If financially it makes sense for Cambria to do it, then there's no reason, well, everybody will have a reason that doesn't want to do it anyway, but that's what our proposal is. It's not specifically for Cambria to incorporate, but for us to do the homework so that we can make an educated decision as to whether it's financially viable and if it solves the money problems that we have. What Dave showed you on the board, those numbers, those are real numbers. That's not something Dave pulled out of his hat. It was, this is an issue we have, and we don't have a lot of alternatives. So for myself, I ask you that you vote to proceed with doing this study and see if it makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. McCann, do you have anything? Yeah, something to say?
Yeah, I think I'll just add that I'm also, agnostic on all the options. It's just an exploration of the finances of it. There were a couple things I noticed in the 2005 report on incorporation. It wasn't terrifically useful in encompassing all the financial impact because there was no area where they brought together all the revenue benefits you would enjoy, but also juxtapose them versus all the costs that would be involved that we'd be taking on. We'd be taking on a tremendous amount of salary, fixed costs, new plant, and things like that. So with the gentleman from Baker Tilly on the line, again, that would be like something we'd be looking to have done in a revision of the report, something that encompasses all the finances, brings them together in what's known as capital budgeting, and calculates a net present value to the town.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, yeah. I guess at this point, the directors, if the directors have any questions of any of you, it's a good time to ask them now. It's hard for me to tell if the lights are on sometimes. Dr. Dean. Yeah. Is he still on the line? No, I think he had to leave. Yeah, he had to go to, yeah. Go ahead.
So the cost to do the consultant is 92,000 something, correct?
That's,
Yeah, so that's the proposal that he's given you. That doesn't mean that you can't negotiate the scope of work to what you want.
Okay, and then, so then there's an additional charge after that if we like the consultant's proposal, and an additional charge after that to incorporate. So we're looking at about $600,000 on top of the 92,000 something if we move forward with incorporation. And what is our deficit right now?
We're roughly around 300,000 is what we were short last.
So we're
Excuse me,
talking about
short.
spending upwards of 600,000 to fix a deficit of 300,000. Is that correct?
That is correct as far as our deficit goes, yes.
Okay. I'm going to let everybody else speak, and then I have something else I want to say.
Vice President Scott.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. My question is, it was a little confusing because you had 4 recommendations, and the only document that you had as a handout prior to our getting this one that we just got only supported really number 4. Is that true?
No.
No. Okay, so what the
No, all 4, we recommend you do all 4. Okay?
Oh.
We recommend that, you find out where you're spending your money, okay, where the money is going. You find out, what your responsibilities on the ranch are and what FFRPs are. We recommend that you investigate somehow a benefit assessment as a method of increasing revenues. And then we recommend you do the same thing with incorporation. We're not recommending that you do, that you actually move ahead with the benefit assessment until you figure out what it's all about, how to go about it, what would make sense, okay? And maybe another fire assessment is the right thing to do. Maybe a parks and recreation overall, maybe one that just addresses the ranch. You've got to look at all that. We did not get to that point at all.
My question is, and maybe the general manager can answer this, the first 3 recommendations, could we do that in-house?
You can't do a beneficial assessment in-house. Very complicated process. It has to be certified by a professional engineer in the end anyway. The one that was done back in 2002 was done by Bob Greshams.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if he was here or not, but he was a professional engineer. You've got to have it certified by a professional engineer. And like I said, it's very complex going through and saying, this house gets this assessment, but this house gets less.
And I understand that. Let me rephrase. 1 and 2 we could do in-house.
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Piece of cake. General manager can do that in the next month.
Right, and the quote or the estimate includes all 4, is what you're saying.
You mean the quote from Baker Tilly?
Yeah.
That's only for the incorporation study.
Okay, well, and that was my concern, was that was the only thing that we got.
Yeah, I couldn't find a firm. I called 4 or 5 consulting firms, engineering consulting firms, and none of them did benefit assessments. I couldn't find anyone in the area. Okay, I didn't call LA, I didn't call San Francisco area. I figured if I couldn't find one around here, you know, maybe SDE,
CSDA?
yeah, CSDA can find somebody for you, okay? But as Mr. Belknap said, you know, they've done them before, so you might want to work with him on that also.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Director Thomas?
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Just we move on, just wanted to address Director Dean and Director Vice President Scott's questions. First off, Director Dean, with the incorporation study to go to, you wouldn't necessarily be spending, say, 600,000 up front. You'd have basically 2 stages where you would take the 92, bring it to a decision stage. The remainder would be put into the financial analysis as an additional cost and considered, you know, going forward as part of the benefit and cost of the incorporation. With regard to the financial analysis, your question, Vice President Scott, with doing something in-house, it's possible we could put together a part of the financial piece, I would think, using the 2005 study, some aspects of that, and potentially even doing, you know, kind of a back of the envelope. Does it make, is it in the ballpark or is it not in the ballpark? And, you know, possibly do that in-house as well. Those are just thoughts.
Any, Dr. Thomas?
Yeah, thanks. And this is a good discussion. And Vice President Scott, you hit on something important, and you were 80% right. What we have, the attachments, the fire suppression benefit assessment is an example of our successful benefit assessment. I have no doubt, properly engineered, another benefit assessment could be successful, moderate cost. Recommendation 3, and I feel and as you're asking the question about what can we do in-house, a real rational approach might be a staged approach. And of course, the claim that the general manager can knock this out in a month, that's nice, but we're not in a smoke-filled room. But it makes sense to do the the costing, the time and costing, by function. And I remember back in the day doing dozens of these in terms of process improvement. How are you going to approach? And I must say, our general manager has shown particular expertise in sorting out operational changes, organizational changes that have been very effective. The recommendation 2, absolutely. I've been bringing this up for years. The Appendix F, and it depends. The appendix number depends on whether you're looking at conservation easement, which of the documents. But it's referenced in almost all of them, and it's a blank page.
It's missing, yeah.
It's missing, and we need to do that. I would support certainly a motion to initiate that and create assignments for who's going to work on that responsibility matrix. And with recommendations 1 and 2 behind us, we could gather that information, come back to it, and say, now, how would we organize a benefit assessment? And meanwhile, and on the incorporation, we've seen good assessments of the revenue potential, so we can gain $1 or $2 million into. And it's interesting how you frame things. As you're looking at a problem, we think about solving the problem as the group we are. We get to incorporation, and it's going to be a whole different animal. It's not going to be the CCSD. It's going to be the city of Cambria. And somebody mentioned, wow, we're finally fully staffed in admin. How long has it taken us to get admin department fully staffed, and way to go, and likewise F&R. Boy, the additional staff count we'd have to bring on into this this village with expertise. Remember the famous words of Arlo Guthrie. You'll remember this one, Harry. One big pile's better than two little piles. You remember from the from the Thanksgiving song. But the concept of there is a benefit in scale, and so our little community would have to build up a public works department, or we'd farm out and still have the same lousy roads. Oh, and we get our public works department organized, and we take stock and realize we've got, it's not millions, it's tens of millions of dollars of liability because the roads we need to improve. Boy, we would dig ourselves a hole deeper than, well, I don't want to go with that analogy. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Grand Canyon, maybe. So, yeah, I wouldn't see us ready to launch into contracting with a consultant to study the incorporation, given what we know about it already and the low probability of success for a community of this nature, given we know in the last several decades there's not been any community like us, our size, incorporate. We saw that grind to a halt a few decades ago, and for good reason. And so there might be wisdom in that.
There have been communities that have incorporated since the revenue sharing, and they've been successful. They all have different sizes. They all had different needs and different revenue sources. So it's not impossible that it would work for Cambria. And I would say that we don't know until we get somebody to go through that study again and really tell us. I agree. The staffing is an issue that we would have to look at. But again, how much staffing do we need? When I went out there and I looked at different cities in San Luis Obispo County, they all have different staffs. I mean, Morro Bay has harbor police. I don't think we're going to need any harbor police, okay? But they are all different, and so they have different levels of success, okay? Pismo Beach is very, very successful. Why? They have a lot of visitors. They have a lot of TOT, okay? That's also true of us. We have a lot of TOT that goes to the county, okay?
Okay. Director Dean, you had something you want to add?
Okay, so since 2004, 4 communities have incorporated. Menifee in 2008, and their population is 109,399. Wildemore incorporated in 2008, and their population is 37,214. Eastvale incorporated in 2010, their current population is 71,024. Europa Valley in 2011, their current population is 107,609. We have one that just did a 90% vote to incorporate, and they're officially incorporated as of July 1st, and that will be Mountain House, and they have a population of 27,000. And looking at why they chose to incorporate, it was to access possible state and federal funds to control land use, tax, and public safety, but they would continue to rely on the county for essential services. But apparently, when it comes to controlling land use, their issue is that they were developing too quickly, and they wanted to slow it down. So, I don't think there's any chance that this community of less than 6,000 people, I think it's just too much for a small community like us to handle to become a city. I would agree with option 1 and 2. We do need to do our research to see where we are, and we need to get that document straightened out between what's our responsibility and what FFRP's responsibility is. But I also think the fact that this report, this extra attachment that we got, came less than 24 hours before our meeting, even though it was posted online and we got the handouts and it was emailed to us. I don't know that it was emailed to everybody on our email list. May I ask if it was?
No.
Okay, so I don't think the public themselves has had enough of an opportunity to see this report that came forward at the last minute. I also have it, and I think I got this out of a finance committee agenda packet, but I think it's something that really should have been included in all of this. If it's in here, I didn't see it. And it's the pros and cons of incorporation and the pros and cons of a benefit assessment. And I really think that should have been included in this agenda packet as well for the public to see. So I know we need to take public comment before we make
I
any
would ask if
decisions.
Director Farmer has any comments either, or any questions.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, President Gray. With regard, first, I want to thank the members of the Ad Hoc Committee on Finance for the work that they've done and for the very straightforward comments on how they feel about the issues. With regard to incorporation, and that's the only one I'm going to address, having lived here for 37 years, known a lot of people, especially people that have lived here about the same amount of time as myself or longer, I don't know of anybody that would favor incorporation of this community. When I think about the fact that probably, and I could be wrong, other than the Vets Hall, the largest building in this town is the old grammar school. And that feels good. The idea of having a city hall, a police department, all the other associated vehicles that come with being a city, it's not Cambria. People come here because we're different. People come here so they can kind of escape from everything else that's going on and kind of go back in time. And somehow incorporating this community just for some type of financial difference in one fashion or another would take away from what essentially Cambria is and how most of us embrace it and why we're here. And so that's my take on it. Is our district a little bit in debt? Apparently. But the debt that we would incur by changing the social fabric of this community, so to speak, would be far greater than we can even measure. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Director Farmer. I do want to open up for public comment before we go any further. Is anybody in the hall here want to speak to this issue? Ms. Dodson, do you have anybody online?
Yes, Tina.
Oh, wait.
Oh.
Mr. Howell.
Yes, thank you. I didn't put a speaker slip in because I wasn't sure where this was going. I'd like to say that, first of all, the report that we had, the subcommittee's report is excellent. Thank them. You guys did an excellent job. So nothing I say should be taken to be a negative in that regard. I think the issue, as I see it here, is that this is an extremely important subject. The fact that we have a structural deficit that is growing is significant and needs to be addressed. The issue of how that is done is something that the entire community has opinions about. And for that reason, I think that because the report, this excellent report, was only made available at the last minute, and even though it was available on the website, if you're not informed that it was there, you wouldn't know to go and look. And I didn't look, and I was reading the agenda packet. So I think this deserves, whatever action this board takes is going to require the community to be really behind the effort. And so I think it's well worth your effort to take the time to bring this to the community and give them a chance to hear all sides. So that would be, I'd appreciate it if you could table it for further discussion.
Thank you. Any other comments from the hall? The audience. Ms. Dodson.
Tina Dickinson.
Tina Dixon.
Yes, thank you. To me, this is sort of pie in the sky. And I agree with others about the cost to go forth with the process. I think it will end up, as I believe there were two other attempts made prior, one 2005 and one prior to that, that they were not successful. And I do not believe that the majority of folks in Cambria would agree to being incorporated. I really do. I mean, I think it was on social media for a while, and the majority of the comments certainly were not in favor of people being wanted of incorporation. And I think that's what would happen. But to spend this kind of money for, as Director Dean pointed out, to recover a certain amount and spend way more in trying to recover that doesn't make sense at all. The other thing is the character of Cambria. Why did we come here? Did we come here because we wanted all of a sudden for it to turn into a city? No, clearly no. And I cannot support this proposal in any way, shape, or form. And I don't think it will go anywhere once the public really learns about it. So I would say for those who worked on it, I don't necessarily appreciate what they've done because it brings up another dividing issue. But this, I think, will heavily favor the folks who are against it rather than the folks who are for it. Thank you. Oh, by the way, I did not receive, and I'm on the distribution list, I did not receive an email regarding this item.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments?
No.
Okay. Just to wrap this up, I think there's 4 recommendations. It's important to point out. I think it's a legitimate point that I think the details of the proposals that have an economic impact, hiring consultants for either benefit assessments or especially incorporation, are complex, and it was probably it's unfortunate that there was some mistake about how things were put into the agenda. But I think it's true that this issue of what to do in the future in these areas has to be taken up later. I would point out, though, that the first 2 recommendations seem to me to be very good preliminary steps towards assessing our financial situation, getting a clearer picture of our financial situation, and identifying some areas that would not require any structural change other than reassigning people or getting other people, i.e. FFRP, to do different things and that sort of stuff. All could be done at the staff level and brought back to the board in terms of proposals. I think I would certainly favor going ahead with the first and second recommendations, and the board can decide how to handle the other 2. But before calling for a motion, I think we have 2 things here. We have 2 simple things that are achievable in the short term and very useful. 2 complicated proposals that I think, from what I've heard from the board, require much more consideration in the future. So with that said, I will entertain a motion.
Any further discussion?
Any further discussion? Yes, Stu.
I just would like to hear, because that sounds like the right direction, and I'd like to hear briefly from Mr. McElhaney if the motion is to direct staff to pursue recommendations 1 and 2. Is that something that staff would benefit from participation of the board, or is that we've got this?
Thank you, Director Thomas. I think it would be good to be working probably with an ad hoc. President Gray is working with Denise on this overhead allocation in the Finance Committee, where we're starting to look at where our hours and how we're charging overhead. And I think we could tie that in there on where our money's going, where staff time is going. And I think we could work that in there and kind of do a 2-for-1 analysis, so to speak. As far as the ranch management plan, that's going to be a doozy, to be honest, because we're starting from scratch, and that would take a lot of work between us and the FFRP. there's some things we have to look at. You know, obviously the discussion has been pretty robust about the deficit. And ultimately, we're doing things now that just we're not seeing the fruits of our labor just yet. You know, what Mr. Aguirre has been doing in terms of limiting the contracting. We've hired some maintenance technicians. We just recently got rid of our cleaning service. So now we're going to have staff do that, which, you know, long range, I'm hoping that in a year or 2 years, we're going to see that deficit close. Ms. Fritz with this investment planning, you know, tripling our returns on investments. You know, that may not be in perpetuity, but there's some things in where we're closing that financial gap. But ultimately, the ranch is not funded. You know, we've never had a mechanism to fund the ranch, so we do need to figure out how we're going to manage that going forward. And it's a delicate conversation because there's a lot of passion around the ranch, but we can't continue to operate this way, as Mr. Pearson and the ad hoc committee have noted. We can't continue to be in a $300 deficit each year. So we do need to figure out how we're going to manage that ranch moving forward. But that is going to be a complex plan to design, and it's going to take quite a bit of time.
Yeah, I'd like to comment in terms of engaging on recommendation number 2 on that ranch responsibility plan. The first time I became aware of that gap was 4 or 5 years ago, when in my first read of the ranch management plan, when I was volunteering at FFRP. So right there, I've got a bias and history working with FFRP. Love the ranch. At the same time, I love this community. I'm here for a reason, and that's service. That's the only reason I'm here in this role. So, you know, throw that out there. All 4 of you are in better position than I am to see my biases. But I'll just say that I'd be happy to help with that, because along with those inherent biases, having read that ranch management plan many times from different angles and conservation easement, et cetera, I know a little about the situation. I can't say I know everything because it's not possible. There's so much, but I know a little.
Director Dean.
If I may suggest, I would recommend that we have an ad hoc committee of President Gray and Director Thomas to work on items 1 and 2 to help the staff.
That'd be fine, actually. And I could leverage, we could leverage the finance committee act work too.
And pros. And pros.
Finance, both of you, finance and pros. And yeah, so exactly. That's a very good concept. If you want to put that in the form of a motion, and Dr. Dean.
I recommend that we accept the recommendations 1 and 2 as put forth in this report, and form an ad hoc committee as well of Director Thomas and President Gray to help staff do these studies.
Do you have a second? Okay, so moving to second that this board, I guess it would accept the recommendations 1 and 2 in the report from the Revenue Enhancement Subcommittee of the Finance Committee, and appoint a ad hoc committee consisting of myself and Director Thomas to aid staff in carrying out those 2 objectives. Roll call, please.
Director Dean?
Aye.
Vice President Scott?
Aye.
Director Thomas?
My wife is going to ask me, what have you gotten yourself into now? But yes.
Director Farmer?
I just want to say that Mr. Thomas's wife is very familiar with everything that he does, and she's just totally expecting whatever, anticipating and appreciating whatever it is that he does. And yes, thank you.
President Gray?
Yes, aye. Okay, so the motion passes, and we'll move on. We'll switch. Director
I
Dean.
just want to thank the representative from Baker Tilly for sitting through all of this and us not taking advantage
Was
of
the first
it.
part of it, yeah.
Likewise.
And I also want to thank the subcommittee, the Finance Committee, for a lot of hard work over a long period of time on a very complicated topic. And hopefully this is going to lead to as is the object of it, to better financial stability for the district. So thank you, all three of you. Thank you very much.
I want to thank them
Yeah.
as well. It was a very good report. Thank you.
I'm going to ask the board, and maybe somewhat optimistically, for an extension of the meeting to 4:30.
Sure.
Number of items, okay, thank you. Well, actually, I keep forgetting we need an actual formal motion on that. If it's without objection, we extend to 4:30.
Does this extension need to include closed session? Or do we need to extend it for longer than
Well,
that?
let's extend this. It would, I don't know, let's extend it to 4:30 for now, because closed session will go on an indefinite time, but at least at 4:30. Going back to the consent agenda, I think as I mentioned, board members may ask quick questions, short questions with, or small, short comments on any item, and also may move to have an item polled for separate consideration. And also, there is public comment on the consent agenda as part of the process. First of all, is there anyone who wants to poll an item? Director Thomas.
Well, thank you, President Gray. And given, I think, the interest that is going to be from the community on 6C, the emergency evacuation route, and the complexity that we've covered 45%-ish of that route, and the questions that would emerge from that, I think we should pull that and have the discussion.
Okay, separately. Okay, let's proceed to talk about or to consider 6A and 6B. Any questions or brief comments from the board? Director Dean.
I have a question, and I asked the general manager this during boardwalk, and I don't know if he was able to get an answer for me. I'm wondering why 1 gallon of 4-cycle fuel costs $115. What is that used for?
So that goes in all of our small trimmers, weed eaters, small motors for landscaping and, tree maintenance. It's non-oxygenated fuel. So the non-operation of that for a month at a time, and then we pick it up and use it for a couple days, then it sits for a couple months, caused in a lot of repair costs at the end of the year, or prepping it for the next year. So a couple $100 of non-oxygenated fuel, and we're not paying $500 or $1,000 for our equipment maintenance throughout the year. But yeah.
Okay, so this is similar to the 2-cycle fuel you could buy in a can to use in a weed eater or whatever?
Exactly, like you see at Home Depot or
Right.
Miners here, that's non-oxygenated fuel. So when you put that in that small motor, it doesn't rust and corrode.
Okay.
And it also doesn't deteriorate over time.
Your
Yeah.
seals and other,
Exactly.
there's a
doesn't
lot of other
separate.
benefits to it than just, quick start operation.
Okay, I knew about the 2-cycle stuff
Yeah.
because my husband uses it in his
2 and
equipment,
4
but-
stroke, yeah.
Yeah,
it's
but I've
fantastic.
never
That-
seen 4-cycle before. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Director Thomas.
Just a couple little questions. On page 49, I noticed this is our first time using coastal tree experts this year. And have we used them in the past, or is this, new? And looking online, they look like a great organization.
Coastal tree. So we had to have an arborist report done at the Stewart Street tanks for our CEQA, our mitigated non-declaration. Upon that evaluation, trees had to be removed prior to any construction or permitting there at the the Stewart Street tanks. So with that, we kind of stumbled onto these guys who do fantastic tree work. So we went ahead and utilized them on the portion for removing Stewart Street tanks, and then along our property at 5500 Heath Lane, because obviously the February and the March rains brought all the wind and saturation that started leaning trees over and putting them in a hazardous and dangerous situation. So they're just the first time that we've used these guys.
Just out of
And
moral
we also
day, right?
received 3 bids for that, and they were the lowest bidder. So we've kind of stumbled onto a great, a supplemental vendor to use for future use. So yeah.
Cool.
And any more questions?
Just minor comments on the minutes.
Okay.
Ready?
Ready. Yeah, go ahead.
So this is on page 68. we're missing under core values. In the strategic planning workshop, we had agreed to add the stewardship core value, and that's not reflected here. And there's one more, but I should capture that, and should I just email that to you, or maybe I already have.
Okay.
But yeah, we're missing stewardship. We strive to leave our infrastructure, community, and environment in better condition for future generations.
Okay.
It's already on the website, but it should be in the minutes. And then on page 80, this is an odd one. Near the bottom of the page, public comment, none. Director Thomas moved to adopt the district strategic plan, yada, yada. Identifying, be recorded as identity, and on page 20, it should be recorded as identify,
Okay.
not identity. One letter, but it means something different.
Okay. Thank you. Is that all?
That's it.
Thank you. Yeah, I just had a quick comment to make on the tree services, actually, because, and this is just a comment, it's not a change, but Gregorio Celadon removed, well, I don't know how many trees he removed, but we paid him $17,000. And I don't know what that is per tree, but coastal tree experts, if in fact they took 18 trees away for 9,000, I think it's worth looking into using them more. Yeah.
You're talking about Mr. Gregorio?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because I just noticed that it's not a matter of anything needs to be changed, but.
Yeah, I could talk to Mr. Geary about it, and Mr. Green can chime in too, but it really depends on what we need to do. As far as what we're really trying to do is not use anybody. We're trying to really use staff for that, and even we've leaned on the fire department a bit to come out and do some of that, but some of these trees are just too large and too complex.
Yeah.
And so depending on what needs to be done is who we reach out to contract-wise.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on this part of the consent agenda? Not the next item, but the items that are the minutes and the expense report?
No.
And nobody in the hall here, okay. Director Dean.
There's one more correction, and I don't know if we should do it now or wait until the strategic plan comes back by for review. But on page 70, we corrected the name of the objective to research long-term water supply and storage solutions, but that did not carry through to the 2 squares below in the grid. Under what? It should be to revitalize R&I ad hoc committee concerning long-term water supply and storage solutions, and the same thing in the grid box below it. So that needs to be corrected in those under what?
Okay. Best thing to do is to make a motion. Ms. Dodson, did you get those corrections noted?
Yes.
Okay, noted. Okay, so make a motion, just say corrections is noted. Is there a motion? Are we done with discussion? Dr. Thomas.
Sure. I move that we adopt the March 14th.
Oh, we did consent agenda because it's.
I'm sorry. Yes. We adopt the consent agenda with the minor revisions already noted and recorded by Administrative Assistant Haley Dodson.
Yes.
Other than 6C.
So I have a second.
Second.
Because I'm moving to second that the minutes and the on the consent agenda and the expense report be adopted, approved with the corrections as noted by Ms. Dodson. Do I have a roll call?
Director Thomas?
Aye.
Director Dean?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
Aye.
Vice President Scott?
Aye.
President Gray?
Aye. And moving on to item 6C, this is the to receive the report that we commissioned from Civil Design Studio, Monte Soto, on improvement of part of the proposed fire evacuation route from Marine Terrace southward to Highway 46, using Harmony Ranch Road and a stretch of unimproved road. Mr. Soto could not make it today, so I could perhaps answer questions, but the long and short of it is that we have the report itself will you know, as the discussion notes, the report gives a broad, you know, kind of a 10,000-foot estimate of cost, assuming certain things have to be done for ecological, you know, environmental purposes and so forth. And I don't know if General Manager McElhaney wants to add anything further before we get to questions, because I can answer more questions too.
No, I think you covered it pretty well, President Gray and Director Dean. You've worked pretty closely together on this project. And
so
we've met, and it was a pretty comprehensive report. So,
yeah. So, any questions?
I'd just say for a
Yeah.
4-digit budget, this is an excellent report.
It is too.
But, you know, maybe, you know, is it the rationale for why this is covering 2.25 of the 4.85 miles of, you know, road that we would need to get to the highway?
Yeah, that's kind of a complicated question. Director Dean, you might want to.
That's the only part of the road that really needs major repair in order for vehicles to traverse across it. The rest of the road going down through to Highway 1 is pretty much an improved road that the residents up there use all the time. So this is a section of road that needs major improvement, because right now a vehicle, I don't think, can go from Rancho Marino through the Decker property to get to that already improved part of the road.
To be slightly more precise about it, it's most of that, you know, unimproved stretch. Just to describe, and this is not really spelled out that exactly in the map, but there is an improved road and there are 3 residences down on the water there, and there's an improved road that comes from Highway 1. South of Highway 46, it goes over the hill and then goes to 3 residences along the ocean. And that is about half of the total that you're talking, that Director Thomas is talking about, the 4 you know, whatever, yeah. And then there's, page 92. And then from there, from that last house, essentially, it's an unimproved dirt road that goes all the way up to Marine Terrace. Now, there's one property on that road through which that unimproved road passes that we have yet to get cooperation from the landowner for doing this. The 2 landowners, the owners of Rancho Marino and John Decker, have been very cooperative about, you know, having, they gave Monte Soto a tour, and you saw the photos of it, and they're actually working with us very closely on this, and they're quite, you know, I think amenable to us, you know, doing this project. The 3rd landowner is an absentee landowner whom we wrote a letter to last year, didn't get a reply from, and his parcel, his 3/4 of a mile, whatever, is not part of this project's summary. You can, if you did a really broad ballpark estimate, you figure, well, if we've done about 3/4 of the length, you add another 30%, it's probably roughly what it would ultimately cost, but we don't know for sure. We don't know about all the stream crossings and the culverts that were needed and so forth. But the good part of the story is that road that goes to the houses is a perfectly good road. It's used now for residents. There's actually a full-time resident living at the last house, and you can drive a passenger car on it. And it should not need improvement. It needs maintenance, though they've chip sealed it. It doesn't need as much as they used to, but it should not need this improvement. So we're talking about maybe 2/3 of a mile that would additionally need improvement in addition to what is described here. So that's the short answer. The long answer to the complicated question is that the improvement only deals with a stretch of the road, not the whole thing.
And I believe Mr. Soto kind of estimated this at a little bit higher than he thought it was going to be, because in talking, I believe he talked to the county, and so it wasn't real clear, like those rail car bridges and the cattle guards, those kinds of things. He wasn't real sure that all of that was going to be needed. He just looked at the worst case scenario and then added a contingency sort of to it all.
Like the rail car bridges would be substitutes for culverts, and you'd only use them if you had to probably for biological, for environmental reasons. And we don't know. We have to get a biologist in to look at it. So, but that is kind of, as Director Dean says, kind of a top, you know, very expensive, worst case, as it were, or most conservative case estimate. Hope that, anybody more questions that? And we have Vice President Scott. Yeah.
Yes, so the part that is not included in this report, is it yellow, blue, or red?
Oh,
Or
It's the purple, the yellow's included,
Okay.
and the white's included, and then
It's the purple.
yeah, and part of that purple, most of that purple is improved,
Okay,
most of that purple's improved, and about, I'd say, just from looking at the map, satellites, maybe 2/3 of a mile needs to be improved, essentially, something like that, broadly. Any more questions or discussion? Any public comment?
No.
Any public comment online? Okay,
No.
thank you. I'll entertain a motion. Oh, Dr. Thomas?
I move that we receive and file Civil Design Studios Cambria Emergency Evacuation Route
Second.
Report.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded that we receive and file, get the title right, receive and file the Civil Design Studios Cambria Emergency Evacuation Route Report. Can I have a roll call, please?
Director Thomas?
Aye.
Director Dean?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
Aye.
Vice President Scott?
aye.
President Gray?
Aye. Moving on to regular business, the remaining items, we have 7A, which is discussion and consideration of introduction of ordinance 01-2024, adding chapter 1.14 to the Cambria Community Services District Municipal Code regarding civil administrative citations. Mr. McElhenney.
Thank you, President Gray. Agenda item 7A, discussion and consideration of an introduction of ordinance 01-2024, adding chapter 1.14 to the Cambria Community Service District Municipal Code regarding civil administrative citations. Just a brief overview of it before I turn it over to Mr. Carmel. We recently were looking at ways to be more effective in enforcing. The initial discussion was enforcing some of our California state fire codes. Right now, CAL FIRE is responsible for developed parcels, but under this administrative citation program, we as the CCSD could now levy, if we had to, citations for not maintaining 30 feet defensible space, 100-foot defensible space. And so that gives us a little bit more leverage in terms of enforcing some of that. Additional things like dogs on leashes, essentially any way to enforce our municipal code. It is a deterrent. This is not a source that the district is looking for revenue generation or anything of that nature, but it's to motivate those to comply with our ordinances. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Carmel.
Mr. Carmel?
Thank you, General Manager McElhaney. I have some short prepared remarks.
Mhm.
After discussion at the February 8, 2024 meeting, the board provided direction that a civil administrative citation ordinance be prepared for board consideration. Accordingly, today's agenda item is to seek board approval to introduce ordinance 01-2024 to add provisions to the CCSD Municipal Code for a civil administrative citation program. As previously discussed, it's important for the district to be able to enforce its codes. In Cambria, this is especially important with regard to enforcement of the fire code, which was the focus of the discussion regarding this ordinance. While I would emphasize that the goal of code enforcement is to obtain voluntary compliance and not to punish people, having enforcement mechanisms in the code is an important part of being able to provide services to the community. Currently, the only tool available to the district is criminal prosecution for violations as infractions or misdemeanors, which, as noted in the staff report, is cumbersome and rarely used. Government Code Section 53069.4 allows agencies such as the CCSD to adopt a program to issue civil administrative citations for district code violations. Such programs are common throughout California and would certainly enhance the district's ability to enforce a wide range of the district's rules, regulations, and ordinances. While appeal hearings are generally very rare in most jurisdictions, as required by the government code, a process for reviewing citations is necessary and has been included in the ordinance. The statute also allows recipients of citations to seek further review in Superior Court. Fines are established by board resolution, subject to certain maximums under the statute. The Board of Directors will establish funds in the amounts allowed by law. A draft resolution has been prepared that can be considered and adopted with the adoption of the ordinance to be effective at the same time as the new district code provisions. At this time, we're recommending the board consider the ordinance and introduce it by title only and waive further reading. The ordinance would then be scheduled for the board's first May meeting for consideration of its adoption. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Carmel? Dr. Thomas?
Thank you. Just one, on page 116, halfway down, C, under abatement of nuisance. Vice President Scott, this may be work coming. It says the Board of Directors shall set forth the process for abatement by district policy. So does this mean that the policy committee will need to add that to their agenda?
It means at some point the board will have to consider adopting a policy for the abatement. There's actually a couple of follow-up steps that are necessary, and that's one of them.
And what are other follow-up steps?
I think there's one other, I wouldn't be able to find it because it's a beast of an ordinance, but it's another policy that's going to have to be developed.
Mm-hmm. Excuse me. Dr. Thomas.
Thank you. I also wanted to comment under fiscal impact. I think this is better than it looks. I would expect some, we don't need to document this, but I would expect that there would be savings of staff time as a result of increased compliance. Because as a consequence, Mr. Green's staff are not going to have to spend hours and hours digging their way through water meters, but there will be some increase in compliance. Every bit of increase in compliance is going to be saving a huge amount of staff time. And that the administrative fees, coming in will compensate for the extra staff time that it does take when folks have to deal with that. So I think that's a net positive.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions?
Yes.
Vice President Scott.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Are those administrative fees part of, can we recoup those, or do they go someplace else?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Carmel, that all comes back to the district.
Okay.
Any other questions? Is there any public comment on this topic, on this item online?
No.
Any written comment?
No.
Okay, thank you. Turn us back to the board for discussion and a motion. Vice President Scott.
Yes, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I move to approve the introduction of ordinance 01-2024, adding chapter 1.14 to the Cambria Community Services District Municipal Code regarding civil administrative citations.
And is there a waive further reading in addition to that, Mr. Carmel?
Yes, that's required.
And to waive the reading.
Waive further reading?
That's right.
Yeah, okay, and to waive further reading. Okay. Do I have a second?
Second it.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we adopt or approve ordinance 01-2024, adding chapter 1.14 to the Cambria Community Services District Municipal Code regarding civil administrative citations and waive further reading.
That was
approve
the introduction.
Excuse me.
Approve the
introduction of ordinance. Okay.
Would you like me to read back the
Yes,
motion?
please. Yes, please.
Vice President Scott moved to approve the introduction of ordinance 01-2024, adding chapter 1.14 to the Cambria Community Services District Municipal Code regarding civil administrative citations and waive further reading. Director Dean seconded the motion.
Good, thank you. Could I have a roll call, please?
Vice President Scott?
Aye.
Director Dean?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
Aye, and I just want to waive it further reading in case it's feeling a little lonely out there.
Director Thomas?
Aye.
President Gray?
Aye. Thank you. We're on item 7D, discussion and consideration of phasing and payment options for advanced metering infrastructure replacement. Mr. McElhenney and Ms. Fritz and Mr. Green may all have something they can tell us in this one.
President Gray, we all have lots to say about this. Agenda item 7D, discussion and consideration of phasing and payment option for advanced metering infrastructure AMI replacement. As Mr. Green had stated earlier in his utilities report, we've had an incredible amount of failing water meters. We're up to 2,200, which has created an unbelievable amount of staff time in manually reading these. There's obviously some percentage lost on, revenue to the water department, even though it might be, not all that much, but it's something. And so we were looking at different ways to start this replacement program. You'll see in the agenda packet that there is a PowerPoint from a previous philosophy on how we're going to move forward with that. It may not particularly align with the staff report. It's for illustrative purposes, and Mr. Green could go further into this for any other questions.
Yeah, and I'm going to say, anybody have any questions of any of the managers here? Vice President Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, and I think I said this early on in my tenure here, and that is that not only the fees, but the interest that are part of the cost of financing this project really kind of give me a stomach ache. Now, I understand that that we definitely need to do this. I just wish there were another way to do it rather than to borrow the money and pay $12,500 in loan fees.
Mrs. Fritz might be able to respond to that.
I'd like to make a comment about that. So what's up for discussion here is to talk about how to pay for this. We don't have to finance it. That is an option. We can pay with our reserves, that's why I've detailed out both here, that our reserves, are approximately 2.7 million. And so that is a choice. I've also indicated here that the preliminary quote for financing, and unfortunately, this isn't, I would have to get a new quote to lock it in, but it was 4.75%. And I also indicated here what our investment rate is right now, to say if we kept that money invested, it would be making 5.48 versus paying the 4.7. It's not that much of a difference. And so the board definitely, I do think we have enough money to pay cash for it if that would be your decision. And in my mind, that's the decision that needs to be made. This project has already been approved.
Yes.
And so this is the second phase. We have already started purchasing the first phase, the $526,000. So we're very, very excited. And so this is the second phase. And I think we definitely could just fund this straight from reserves.
Ms. Fritz can ask, that would be the majority of our reserves, though, for water?
No, we have 2.7 million as of 6/30/2024. So that was last year. So this year, I don't have a real estimate on where we're going to land at the end of the year, but we could be contributing to those reserves. We could be, and the 2.7 is undesignated. So I did take into consideration the money that we have already designated in water for other projects. So there is more than 2.7 million in water reserves, but we've already allocated part of those reserves to other projects. So it would be 2.7 minus 680,000. So we'd still have about 2 million.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. The thinking of the Finance Committee on this issue was to compare what the money in reserves would earn versus what would be paid out in, if we financed, what would be spent on interest. And the balance was, we would come out ahead by financing. It's like a 5-year, it's not a long-term loan, it's like a 5-year loan, I believe. And that was the thinking of the Finance Committee. So, any other Dr. Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, President Gray. And a couple of the questions I had actually came up in the Finance Committee meeting. I'd like to hear discussions on those questions here for our benefit, because it's, I guess the predominance of the market analysts expect that it won't be that long in the future before yields on accounts like we have our investments accounts in will start to decline, and we don't know what the interest rates will be. But looking in your crystal ball, none of us have one, but you know what I'm talking about. You're better at this than I am. What do you see as the odds of the yield from our investments declining below our loan rate? Then there's one other question, but that's big enough for now.
Yeah, I mean, that's really hard to predict. I think because it is such a short-term loan, I honestly don't have the strongest feeling either way, because the difference, as well as, interest rates are variable on so many different factors and what's going on around the world and in the government and everything else. So, I think we've seen, I do know that we got into the market at a really, really good time. And so we have some good interest rates on our investments right now. And so those will not last forever. But our 5-year, we have, so it's really hard to predict. And it is such a short-term loan. And I do think that there's we can pay it, even if we did finance it. I think we can pay it after 2 years.
After 2 years, yeah. So it's essentially you have 2 years, and you can lock in at 5% plus for 2 years right now. I mean, that's the rate. On short-term money, it goes out to like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and in years 3, 4, and 5, we have that option to pay off early.
Yeah, and if I go back and try and lock in a rate, and if it's over 5%, it might be best just to spend to buy it. So that's what's hard about, coming before the board and asking for a decision for things that are changing, and this isn't completely locked in. And these interest rates are, what we're earning versus what we'd be paying are really close. So,
If it was your household budget, which way would you go?
Director Thomas, you're putting me on the spot.
Would be good to ask Jim, our concerns about infrastructure and having another major infrastructure issue where we're gonna, obviously we know we have a lot of aging infrastructure, how do you feel, Jim, about some of those reserves being spent in cash?
See, I'm a little bit more conservative when it comes to reserves. When you look at an installation for 2,700 foot of pipe in the wetlands, which we know the environmenting and the permit, but that has nothing to do with the cost of installation. We're looking at $2 million for that. So if we take ourselves down to a $2 million range in our savings account, and you have that circumstance or event happen on this side of town where we don't have to wait, or wetlands, but we need to go in and get that 12-inch, 10-inch main reinstalled, I'd just be a little bit leery. I'm not a big finance guy either, but I think I'd finance and rather hold on to the liquid.
And I mean, we have these bigger projects coming that we're gonna have to finance too. I mean, and I agree with that. I think you could go either way. But we are in a situation where we do have emergencies, and that money is nice to have. And even though it may sound like a lot, we have 2.7 million. I mean, more than that with the obligated ones. It just takes one emergency. It's really more of an emergency fund at this point than a real capital investment fund.
Absolutely. If you think about the event that we had out here last October, that was a motivating factor for our contractor to come in when he knew that he was going to get paid at the end of this. And I think that's what kind of kept costs down. Again, that was only $150,000. But that can escalate really quickly if we'd have to go across Highway 1 or, something of that nature, where we had a lot of other stakeholders and, environmental to take care of. So
Thank you. Any more questions? Then we haven't taken public comment. Is there any public comment online?
No.
And none in the hall, okay. Return to the board for a motion and/or discussion. Dr. Thomas.
No, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I move that we finance the $680,000 plus financing fees for the advanced metering infrastructure replacement.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we adopt the, how's it said, the financing option for the advanced metering infrastructure AMI replacement. Could I have a roll call?
Director Thomas?
Aye.
Director Dean?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
Aye.
Vice President Scott?
No.
President Gray?
Aye. On to 7E, another item out of Finance Committee. This is the, we had already, I think, taken this up once. Yes, the Board of Directors reviewed this policy. This is the reserve policy, and we reviewed it on March 14th, and it was brought back with some revisions that were proposed or that were recommended by the board. And this is the revised version. And Ms. Fritz or Mr. McElhenney, do you have any more comments on that?
I do not, President Gray.
Yeah. Any questions from the board? Obviously, the revisions are redlined. Yeah. Mr. Thomas, Director Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, and I hate to be the Mikey Downer in this case, but the reserve policy, I was just looking in the reserve guidelines from the CSDA that they give us, and first line, a reserve policy must set a target level of reserves to maintain. And this policy does not do that. It sets a desired rate. We would like to save 10%, you know, sort of like the tithing mentality, and that's a good thing. But I think utilities manager, Green just clued us into his mindset. It's like he's given us a clue where his danger level is. It's like, okay, now I know where his personal red line is, and it's about right. You know, we could have a major project. We could have two in the same year. You do some probabilistic assessment. We haven't done that. It's tough, but we have to start somewhere. And I have a hard time voting for a reserve policy that does not set a minimum reserve level as recommended by CSDA. Yes, yes.
Or percentage.
Or a percentage of fund. One or the other.
Any other questions and comments from the board? Dr. Dean.
Well, it says in here, the lesser of $1,000 or 1% of revenue will be set aside in any of the district's funds. So isn't that basically a minimum?
That sounds like flat broke to me.
Yeah, well, when I was on a previous board, we were told that our reserves should be over a 5-year period, 20% of the cost to replace or repair our most important asset. That's what I was taught. But that's 20% accumulated over a 5-year period of what it would cost to replace or do a major repair of that most valuable asset. So I don't know how that relates to our different funds, but maybe Mr. Green can talk to that, since most of our emergencies will probably happen in the utilities department.
And just knowing how much I&I there is, that's giving us a clue that we don't know how far away we are.
I just to sort of move this along, we get into a protracted discussion about where to set the minimum and what percentage. I think we have to take this back to Finance Committee and deal with that issue at that level, because this was a document that was prepared based on almost another philosophical assumption about what should be done. I don't know what the board thinks about Ms. Fritz, yeah.
I'd just like to add, like, we did add that we will be working towards a 10-year financial plan, minimum and maximum limits, and integration with the strategic plan. I mean, I'm fine taking it back. I think we all acknowledge we need to work on the minimums and maximums. I think that what Director Dean said is like a good basis, but for me, I feel like at least in our enterprise funds, we would have to go get evaluated what that replacement value would be for our most expensive. And there's companies out there that can do evaluation, so we can base it on like real numbers. I have reached out to colleagues that have do this and what companies they use to get these evaluations. For the general fund, it would be different. It could be like a 6 month of operating expenditures or something like that. And so it definitely would be a deeper discussion. And that was, and I think our intent was to, we're supposed to be looking at these things yearly, and that was not happening. And so this was our year's worth of effort to update it.
My sense,
this is better. This is significantly better than what we had.
Yeah, my sense from the last meeting where we handled this, that was that this is a kind of a placeholder. This is a revision of the kind of what we had already. We had two policies. We did a lot of work, kind of harmonizing things and getting things clearer, and we added to make explicit that we're going to move on to a much more data-driven, planning-driven reserve policy in the, moving forward. So I think the spirit of this was to have something better for the coming year. In a year from now, to have something much more related to our actual risks and actual financial needs. So I think, unless we don't have any more discussion, I just want to entertain a motion, because this is something we kind of approved in concept on March 14th, and it's coming back with the revisions that we asked for. So I would say, we probably should. This is not the last. It's not the end of the story. I'll say that.
Yeah, and I'll acknowledge it didn't come back with the revision I asked for, but at the same time, I agree in spirit that what you're saying is absolutely true. Yeah. This is significantly better than the two we had, and so I'll be here in a year.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion. Dr. Dean.
Okay, I move that we adopt policy 2150, reserve policy recommended by staff and the Finance Committee.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the board approve updated policy 2150, reserve policy recommended by the Staff and Finance Committee. Could I have a roll call, please?
Director Dean?
Aye.
Vice President Scott?
Aye.
Director Thomas?
Thank you, and aye.
Director Farmer?
Aye.
President Gray?
Aye. Well, yes, I was going to say, we have a short item 7E and future agenda items, but I think we're going to be going, and I will extend this time to cover what I think is probably the likely length of the closed session, maybe to 5:15. If everybody's okay with that, if we can get our work done, we'll less than that. Okay, thanks. The meeting's extended to 5:15. 7E, 7F. This is the to advertise the position, right? You advertise the position, open position on the pros committee. And General Manager McElhenney or
My pleasure, President Gray. Agenda item 7F, discussion and consideration to direct staff to advertise for an open position on the pros committee. On April 3rd, Mr. Johansson, who's served the district well for many years, resigned from the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Committee, effective April 16th. And in according with our policies and bylaws, we should be advertising for that vacancy for a minimum of 2 weeks. I do believe we recently changed our policy to keep applications on file for a period of 2 years, and those folks could also be considered.
Yeah.
And so I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Any questions? Any public comment?
No.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion.
And it wasn't a question. I just wanted to comment that at the pros committee meeting Tuesday, your Kermit announced this would be his last meeting, and there truly was an outpouring of honor and appreciation for Kermit Johansson's energy, his drive. One of the statements that he truly has represented the service to the community and trying to get better pedestrian pathways. That's been his mission, and that energy, I promised Kermit, that energy will not die.
Hopefully not.
And I would move that we direct staff to advertise for an open position on the pros committee.
Second. Okay, it's been moved and second that this board directs staff to advertise for an open position on the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Committee. Roll call, please.
Director Thomas.
Aye.
Director Dean.
Aye.
Director Farmer.
Aye.
Vice President Scott.
Aye.
President Gray.
Aye. On to
President Gray, I just want to make a brief comment on this item.
Yeah.
The Pros Commission in the past and the Pros Committee now, with the leadership, and this is no reflection on the Pros Commission, but the Pros Committee under the leadership of Director Thomas is doing an excellent job. And I think anybody that would desire to participate in being part of this Pros Committee would be joining a group of very passionate and committed people with really good leadership, and you'd be feeling pretty good with whatever it is that you'd be contributing. So that's my take on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think the motion's been made, and we did the roll call, so we're going to move on to future agenda items, I guess. Ms. Dodson, do you want to, call the, list the items that we have already on the docket, I guess, if you can.
Sure, I don't think they've changed since last week's
Okay,
announcement.
do we need to hear them? No, okay. Does anyone have, Director Farmer?
This is not a future agenda item. I just want to make a comment. I probably should have done this when we had the general manager's report at the beginning of the meeting, other than the end. So last night, there was over 24 people that were attending the NCAC meeting, and then Director Thomas and myself were in the audience, so to speak. And one of the other people that was in the audience was our general manager, Mr. McElhaney. The reason I bring this up is because he was in the process of leaving a leadership conference that he had been in San Diego and moving through airports to ultimately arrive here in San Luis Obispo and drive home. And yet he attended the entire 3 hours of that NCAC meeting, which I thought was really stepping up to the plate and above and beyond. So I just wanted to make that comment.
He's still awake. Okay, thank you, Director Farmer. I think without any, I don't think any full, public comment on the future agenda items, do we?
No public comment.
We can proceed to adjourn into closed session, and before Mr. Carmel announces the topics, I will invite anybody who wants to comment on these three items, any of these three items, to do so now. We have no one in the hall. Ms. Dodson, do you have anybody, or do we? No. Do you have anybody online who would like to comment on any of these items?
No one via Zoom, but I'll read Jim McConnell's comment here again if you'd like.
We can, short, yeah.
Okay, so this is from Jim McConnell. I urge the Cambria Community Services District Board to refuse to adopt a resolution of necessity to commence the eminent domain process against the Coast Unified School District. The board should instead direct the general manager to compromise with Coast Unified School District by reaching a mutual acceptable extension of the lease agreement for the service district's continued use of the school district's property. Jim McConnell.
Thank you. Director Dean.
We usually, I think, have Mr. Carmel introduce the items before we take public comment.
Well, we can do that now.
President Gray, Tina Dickinson just raised her hand.
Okay. First of all, let's have Mr. Carmel introduce the item, and then Tina can comment.
Thank you, President Gray. Agenda item 9A is a conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. The agency's designated representative is General Manager Matthew McElhaney. The employee organization are the Service Employee International Union. 9B is Public Employee Performance Evaluation pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B1, titled General Manager. And item 9C is a conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. The property is 2950 Santa Rosa Creek Road, Cambria. Assessor's parcel number 013-081-7075. The agency negotiators are General Manager Matthew McElhaney and District Counsel Timothy Carmel. Negotiating parties are the Coast Unified School District, and under negotiation is lease or easement fee, purchase, price, and terms of payment of the property. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dickinson wanted to comment?
Yes, followed by Elizabeth
Okay,
Bettenhausen.
please. Ms. Dickinson first.
Yes, thank you, President Gray. I would, on item 9C in closed session, I would strongly urge the board as they enter into closed session to carefully consider item 9C and work toward a lease agreement with the school district and abandon any thinking or thoughts of wanting to purchase the property. In reading the New Times article this morning, General Manager McElhaney actually, for the first time that I'd seen anywhere, said that the district required the almost 3 acres for security of the site. For 23 plus years, the district has leased the property, and the extension of the additional property doesn't do anything to secure the site. If you've been out and looked at what's beyond the current location of SR4 and the school well, it's basically, brush and growth, and then it extends over to Santa Rosa Creek. I see no reason for our district to even contemplate that, but because of what I've gathered from public sentiment about this and the division that it has created in our community, I would hope that our district and the school district will be able to come to an agreement, not based on this district purchasing their land, but on a fair amount to lease it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dickinson.
Elizabeth Bettenhausen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Bettenhausen, yes. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I owe a debt of gratitude to the district counsel, Timothy Carmel. I was ignorant of what a mediation involves, and he said that the decision in a mediation process comes back to the board for the board vote. So if no matter how it goes up, down, or across, or in this case, dribbles through, it comes back to the board. So the public will have opportunity to speak again on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comment?
No.
Okay. Well, I think at this point we adjourn to closed session.